Chapter 627. Really? Rabbit was overjoyed. Even his ears straightened, his eyes shining as he looked at Lone Moon. Of course. Lone Moon nodded, smiling kindly as he patted his shoulder. We're considered old friends. There's no need to stand on ceremony. If you can't move it, I'll send a few more disciples to help you. All right, thank you, great immortal. No, sect master. Rabbit bowed excitedly. Then I'll go back and pack my things now. He turned and was about to leave. When he saw the person behind him, he paused, as if just remembering that he had a mission. But Don't worry, I'll just inform little Biao. Lone Moon glanced at the earth immortal beside him and said, This? Fellow immortals, it's not convenient for Rabbit now. Why don't I send someone else to send you to Qingzhe Heavenly Palace? That earth immortal was easy to talk to. He hurriedly replied respectfully, Thank you, Supremacy. Lone Moon then turned to Yu Hong and instructed, Yu Hong, personally send fellow immortals to little Biao to explain the situation. After you come back, send a few disciples to help Rabbit move. It's best if they're good at earth element sorcery. Yes, Elder, Yu Hong answered. With that said, Lone Moon raised his hand and set up a teleportation array that led straight to little Biao's old nest. Almost instantly, a white circular array appeared beside him. Perhaps it was the first time he saw a teleportation array in the immortal realm. Zhou Shuming looked at it curiously and thanked Lone Moon again. Thank you, Supremacy. Then he turned and walked towards the array excitedly, standing properly in the array. Yu Hong was just about to follow, when her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes widened as she looked at the person in the array, exclaiming, Elder Lone Moon. Lone Moon subconsciously turned back, only to realize that the enemy had suddenly changed. The array clearly had not been activated, but Zhou Shuming's body seemed to be scattering fluorescent light. Spots of white light suddenly appeared. No, not his body, his entire body was glowing. The light dissipated very quickly, even his figure became fainter. Zhou Shuming also looked confused, as if he did not know what was happening at all, his expression still full of curiosity. This is the teleportation of the immortal realm dash. Before he finished speaking, he was about to disappear completely. Chef. In a flash, I Ching appeared in the array. Just as he was about to reach out to grab Zhou Shuming, he was a step too late. Zhou Shuming had already disappeared completely, leaving behind an unactivated formation, as if it had never existed in the first place. Rabbit was also dumbfounded as he stared at the spot where the man had disappeared. What happened to fellow immortals? What kind of spell was that? Lone Moon and Chef's faces darkened. No, that wasn't a spell. They didn't sense any aura of a spell at all. That person just disappeared into thin air. Even Chef, who was the manager, could not stop him. I Ching conjured a seal with both hands and used his sorcery to track the other party's aura. A moment later he paused. He is no longer in the immortal realm. Rabbit was stunned. If he wasn't in the celestial realm, could he be in the mortal realm? But didn't he just ascend? Lone Moon and I Ching's faces darkened. Lone Moon turned to the two people behind him and said, Yu Hong, bring Rabbit down first and arrange for the disciples to help him move. I will explain to little Biao about that earth immortal just now. Yes, Elder. Oh, all right. Although Rabbit was still full of questions, he obediently followed Yu Hong down. It was only after the two of them had left that Lone Moon and I Ching turned to look at the person at the table. Shining, what does the warning mean? Why was there someone that even Chef could not catch? As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes widened. That earth immortal just now couldn't be an invader, could he? It might have nothing to do with him. Shining shook her head. Then how did he suddenly disappear? Where did he go? I just tracked the data of the moment he disappeared. Shining glanced at the light screen and tapped on it. After looking at it carefully for a while, she said, Chef was right. He went back to the lower realm. Just that they did not know which small world it was. How is that possible? The two of them were shocked. I Ching stepped forward and said, Master, I did not sense the opening of the realm gate. How did the other party directly go down to the lower realm without going through the realm gate? It's not just back to the lower realm. Shining pointed at the data on the light screen and said, In that instant, All his data and attributes were reduced by more than 50%. Reduced data? Lone Moon paused and immediately reacted. You mean his cultivation has regressed? 50%. That meant that he had fallen from at least an Earth immortal back to the nascent soul stage. Yes, and it's within the normal range of his vital signs. That meant that he was not injured. Although the heavenly Tao would suppress part of one's cultivation in the lower realm, that was only suppression, not a direct drop. Apart from serious injuries, under what circumstances could a person's cultivation fall by half? Wait, regressed. Lone Moon thought of something and turned to look at Shining. He rewound. There was such an example. Didn't Chef rewind to become immortal back then? You can say that. Shining thought about it and added, it's just that in that instant, there were other data anomalies. So he was not the only one who rewound. It could be everyone in the small world he was in. Huh. Lone Moon paused. What do you mean? That is. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. That small world's time has been rewound. That was possible. Apart from the managers and the ancient gods of creation, nobody else could reverse time. Shorty was the only ancient god left here. She would not do something like this for no reason. That meant that the person who reversed time was intruder. Chef said directly. Lone Moon instantly thought of the hole that suddenly appeared on the river of forgetfulness. He could not help but curse. Shit, it was still the intruder's fault after all. Master, I did not sense the intruder's aura, I Ching said in a low voice. If there was a creature from another world, he should have been the first to discover it. An intruder who can reverse time naturally would not be easily detected by you, Lone Moon said. Lone Moon said, didn't that invading manager also occupy the entire small world before he was discovered? It's already growing mushrooms. I Ching's frown deepened. But if that's the case, where are we going to find that intruder? If they could not sense it, then they could not find it. Why don't we ask little Biao? Shening suggested. The two of them paused and reacted immediately. Holy shit, they almost forgot about it. Zhua Shuming was summoned to the heavenly palace by little Biao. He must know which small world he came from. Lone Moon immediately took out a communication jade token and sent a bit of immortal chi into it. Instantly, the jade token flashed white, and a familiar figure floated out from it. Little Biao's voice sounded. Young Emperor Lone Moon, I wonder why you are looking for me. Exalted goddess. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Shening at the side. His entire body trembled. Hey little Biao. Shening greeted. Biao Ting's legs turned to jelly. His tall and imposing figure instantly became shorter. He knelt down with a thud. Little Biao is here. Lone Moon. I Ching. How big of a psychological trauma was this? Oh. Chapter 628. Little Biao, we have something to ask you, Shening said. Yes, exalted goddess, no problem, exalted goddess. Little Biao sat down obediently and nodded furiously. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Did you ask Rabbit to bring an immortal called Zhua Shuming back to the heavenly palace? Zhua Shuming? Rabbit. Little Biao looked confused. Who? He's an earth immortal who just ascended, Lone Moon explained. Just ascended. Little Biao paused. Then realization dawned on him. Oh, you mean the person Yu Shui went to fetch? His surname is Zhua. I guess he's not a demon immortal? Why, you don't know him? Lone Moon looked at him strangely. I don't. Little Biao shook his head. This is the first time I've heard of this name. Then you and him. Little Biao did not know that earth immortal. Why did he bring him to the heavenly palace? By right. An earth immortal should not have the right to enter the celestial emperor's heavenly palace. It's a long story. Little Biao turned to look at Shening. Then he said obediently. Exalted goddess, do you remember the first time little bird and I met you? I don't. Shening replied instantly. Don't hit me like that. It hurts. Little Biao's mouth twitched. Then he smiled awkwardly. Exalted goddess, little bird and I had some misunderstandings about the divine weapon. We lost control and fought all the way to the lower realm. We met Exalted Goddess when we crossed the realm gate. It was Exalted Goddess who asked us to send Lady Xian Tong back to the sect. Do you remember? Oh, Shening nodded. She did not look like she remembered at all. And then, He obviously couldn't remember, right? That must be it, right? It was because of that battle that I realized I lost something when I returned to the immortal realm. Little Biao scratched his head in embarrassment. What did you lose? Lone Moon asked. It's a heart-protecting scale on my chest. Little Biao's eyes flashed. That scale has been imbued with my dermic powers for more than 10,000 years. It's considered a supreme-grade immortal weapon in the lower realm. A few days ago, I divined that this scale had been picked up by someone, and that person had already ascended to the upper realm. That's why I ordered Yu Shui to pick him up and take back that heart-protecting scale. It's just a piece of scale. Is there a need to go so far? Lone Moon frowned. Putting aside the fact that its beast body was already covered in scales, losing 1 or 2 pieces was not a big deal. Since it had already fallen off, was it really necessary to ask for it back? It's been thousands of years. Even if it's a heart-protecting scale, you should have grown it back by now, right? Yes, it has grown back. Little Biao's expression changed. He looked around nervously and hesitantly. Then with an aggrieved expression he said, But this is different. How is it different? You're not a dragon. Then you should know which small world he came from. Lone Moon asked. I do. Little Biao nodded. He's in the Rainbow Light Realm. Lone Moon turned to look at Chef. I Ching nodded. It seemed like he had found the place. He heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he explained to Little Biao about Rabbit moving, and the news that Zhuo Shuming might have come to the lower realm. He only skipped the part about turning back time. Little Biao's face was full of despair about the scale that fell into his hands back to the lower realm. He did not feel good at all. Exalted goddess. He raised his head weakly and looked at Shining. You asked about this person. Are you planning to come to the lower realm? Then can you? That's enough. Lone Moon instantly knew what he wanted to say. If we find your heart-protecting scale, we will bring it back for you. Yes, exalted goddess. Thank you, exalted goddess. Little Biao was overjoyed. He felt as if his broken heart had been repaired. Lone Moon then cut off the communication and kept the jade token. He turned to Chef and said, Since we've found the place, let's go to the lower realm. As long as they knew which small world it was, it should not be difficult to find Zhuo Shuming. Chef nodded. Then, he turned and raised his hand to open the realm gate of the Rainbow Light Realm. Lone Moon sent a message to Yu Hong and instructed her. Then the 3 of them crossed the realm gate together. Almost instantly, the scene in front of the 3 of them changed. They arrived at a flat land. This was a small world with exceptionally rich spirit qi. It was comparable to the 3 clear realms in Fatty's holy arrival realm. Chef sensed for a moment and instantly found Zhuo Shuming's position. Although Shining said that his data had been reduced by half, and the few of them were prepared for the fact that his cultivation level would drop, they did not expect it to be this low. Chapter 629. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Was this lowering? Was this reheating? He glanced at the crowd in front of him, who was looking at Zhuo Shuming curiously and excitedly. His face was still the same, except that it was a little immature. But his cultivation was not at the nascent soul stage as they had guessed, but a qi refinement rookie. The place he was at looked like a disciple selection venue for an immortal sect, perhaps some powerful sect. When they found their way here, there were already many cultivators who had signed up. Most of them were at the 3rd or 4th level of qi refinement. Zhuo Shuming was one of them. His cultivation was slightly higher than the others, at the 7th level of qi refinement. But compared to his earth immortal cultivation, which he had just ascended an hour ago, it was like heaven and earth. Fellow Taoists, Lone Moon could not help but call out, looking at him with a complicated expression. Zhuo Shuming faltered, looking around before turning back. Fellow Taoist, know me? You don't remember me? Lone Moon frowned. It seemed like this time reversal was no different from rewinding. Even his memories had disappeared. Sorry. Zhuo Shuming thought that he had forgotten, instantly looking guilty. I really can't remember. Where did we meet? How should I address you, fellow Taoist? My Tao name is Lone Moon. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. His tone changed instantly, and an excuse came out of his mouth. It's not a big deal. We met once a few years ago. You didn't bring any spirit stones then. You even borrowed 2 spirit stones from me for the teleportation fee. Have you forgotten? I Ching. Shining. What kind of lousy scam excuse was this? Who would believe it? I see. Zhuo Shuming looked enlightened. I'm sorry. I actually forgot such an important matter. Luckily we are fated to meet again. With that said, he hurriedly took out 4 spirit stones and handed them over. I'll return the spirit stones to you now. Thank you for your help back then, fellow Taoist. Master and disciple. He really believed it, wasn't this person too gullible? Don't stand on ceremony, fellow Taoist, it's fate that we met. Lone Moon smiled and accepted the spirit stones generously. The master and disciple. He actually accepted it shamelessly. As expected of someone with the surname Niu, his skin was really thick. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon. Are you also here to participate in the Tai Yin sect's disciple selection? Zhuo Shuming asked casually. Fellow Taoists will wishes to join Tai Yin sect. Lone Moon glanced at the people around him. I wonder what's so special about Tai Yin sect. Fellow Taoists must be joking. Zhuo Shuming said sincerely. Who doesn't know that Tai Yin sect is the #1 sect in the world? Everyone wants to join it. However, the Tai Yin sect is very strict when it comes to accepting disciples. I've worked hard for a long time, and only dared to come here after I reached the 7th layer of Qi disciple. I see. Lone Moon nodded. Oh yes, I still don't know fellow Taoist Lone Moon's cultivation level. He could not tell Lone Moon's cultivation level, so it must be higher than his. Foundation establishment, Lone Moon said casually. Foundation establishment. He was startled. Fellow Taoist, you're already a foundation establishment cultivator. Then, why are you here for the selection? He hurriedly pointed to a courtyard not far away and said anxiously. Fellow Taoist, you must have come to the wrong place. That's where the foundation establishment cultivators are selected. Tai Yin sect has always valued cultivation. Since you're already a foundation establishment cultivator, you'll definitely be able to join. Lone Moon glanced at the courtyard and cupped his fists. Thank you for the reminder, fellow Taoist Zhuo. Fellow Taoist, you're too kind. Zhuo Shuming smiled kindly. Who knows, we might even be fellow disciples in the future. Then I wish you success, fellow Taoist. Lone Moon replied politely. He did not stay for long. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he took the 4 spirit stones he got for free, and left with Chef and Shining. It was only when they reached the end of the street that Lone Moon asked, How is Chef? Does that Zhuo Shuming have the aura of an invader? No. I Ching shook his head. I've just checked his body and soul. There's nothing out of the ordinary. Lone Moon's frown deepened. Could it be that this Zhuo Shuming really had nothing to do with the invaders? Was he just an unlucky fellow who was dragged back to the mortal realm because of time reversal? Where's little Biao's scale? Shining suddenly asked. The two of them faltered. I Ching then thought of this and replied. Nothing. There's no trace of immortal qi on him. The scale is not on him. Which means to say, he probably hasn't encountered that opportunity. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He seemed to have thought of something. His brows furrowed again. Master, what should we do now? I Ching asked. Shining tilted her head and thought for a moment. A moment later she replied. Wait. Wait. Wait for what? The two of them exchanged a look. A moment later, Lone Moon's eyes brightened. You mean wait for the invader to appear on his own? Is he that dumb? Shining habitually took out a fruit and took a bite. There must be a reason why the invader spent so much effort to reverse time. Master, are you saying that he might be planning to change something? I Ching reacted. Shining nodded. He only reversed time in one small world. That proves that he doesn't have the ability to affect the entire plane. And that's Zhuo 2 bucks. It's Zhuo Shuming. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Where did Zhuo 2 bucks get this nickname from? 2 bucks spirit stones? Yes, he's already from the immortal realm. Shining continued. By right, the matters in the small world shouldn't affect him. He shouldn't have come to the lower realm either. But the invader purposely dragged him down to reverse time. Why do you think that is? The invader's goal might be related to Zhuo Shuming. I Ching exclaimed. If that's the case, he'll definitely appear by his side. Then we just have to follow Zhuo Shuming and we'll find the invader. Lone Moon also reacted. Holy shit, this logic was so lame. Indeed, the cheats didn't need to use their brains. Then now I Ching turned to look at Shining. Of course we joined Tai Yin sect first. It'll be easier for us to keep an eye on him. Lone Moon made the final decision. Let's go. Let's register. With that, he led the two of them into the courtyard, where Zhou Shuming mentioned the registration for Foundation Establishment disciples. He adjusted his cultivation level to the Foundation Establishment stage. Compared to the sea of people outside, the courtyard was much quieter. There were only a few people inside. Zhou Shuming was right. Everyone here was at the Foundation Establishment stage. Two disciples dressed in blue uniforms were at the front of the registration. They were probably from Tai Yin sect. Both of them were qi refinement cultivators. They were very enthusiastic towards the people who came to register. They specially invited them to sit down. Then, they quickly went forward to register their names and other information. Then he tested his cultivation in spells, passed through a few simple formations, and tested his spiritual root and so on. Lone Moon and Chef were high-level cultivators to begin with. These tests were nothing to them. As for Shening, the two disciples didn't even see her. These tests were indeed easy for Foundation Establishment cultivators. Not just them. Everyone else in the courtyard passed without any pressure. By the time they were done, the selection of qi refinement disciples had also come to an end. There were less than half of the cultivators in the courtyard. And Zhou Shuming, who was at the 7th stage of qi refinement, also failed. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shening. Shit. Chapter 630. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lone Moon. You have successfully joined the Tai Yin sect. Zhou Shuming smiled sincerely and said with some envy, I knew that fellow Taoist would definitely be able to get what you want. What the hell? You've already been killed. So what's the point of them joining the Tai Yin sect? In any case, you're someone who has ascended before. Aren't you embarrassed to be so weak? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched several times. He took a deep breath to suppress the curses in his heart. Fellow Taoists, what are your plans for the future? Zhou Shuming scratched his head in embarrassment. To tell you the truth, I heard that Guiyi sect will be accepting disciples in Pinghua City in 3 days. Although Guiyi sect's reputation is not as good as Tai Yin sect, it's still one of the 6 famous sections. That's why I wanted to try my luck there. Why didn't you say so earlier if there was a backup plan? Oh, is Guiyi sect that good? Lone Moon asked. Of course. Zhou Shuming's eyes brightened. Although Guiyi sect doesn't have as many disciples as Tai Yin sect, most of them are pill cultivators. There's even a 9th stage pill refiner in the sect. Among the 6 famous sects, Guiyi sect is famous. 9th level alchemist? Lone Moon thought for a moment. Could he have been an alchemist in the past? That's right. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. The only level 9 alchemist in the entire Rainbow Light realm is in Guiyi sect. The other sects have to seek help from Guiyi sect if they want to refine high-grade elixirs of 9th grade and above. If that's the case, Guiyi sect is indeed a good choice. Of course, and their requirements for disciples are different from the Tai Yin sect. They don't care about spirit roots. Disciples with different spirit roots can join as long as they pass the entrance test. That good? We'll go with you then. Then when? Zhou Shuming was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he stared at him. It's decided. How do I get to Pinghua City? No, fellow Taoist. Haven't you already joined the Tai Yin sect? It's our first time out, so we don't know the way. How about we go together? But you can, there's no time to lose. Why don't we set off now? Oh right, I forgot to introduce you. He pointed to the 2 people beside him and said, These 2 are my companions. This is I Ching, a sword cultivator. As for the other one, it's not important. Zhou Shuming. Shening. Motherf ***. Zhou Shuming was a little confused. Even he did not understand why the 3 of them, who had clearly passed Tai Yin sect's selection and had a bright future ahead of them, would mysteriously decide to follow him to Guiyi sect after a short conversation. He thought back to their conversation and reflected on what he had said that had caused them to change their minds and choose Guiyi sect over Tai Yin sect. But no matter how he explained, the few of them seemed determined to join Gui sect. By the time they reacted, they were already on the way to Pinghua City. Zhuo Shuming did not feel good at all. He looked at the three of them with guilt in his eyes, and looked like he wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. He didn't expect that a few casual words from him would have such an effect. Fellow Taoists, where do we go next? Lone Moon pointed at the intersection in front of them. Zhuo Shuming looked at the three of them speechless. After a while, he pointed to the left and said, Pinghua City is in the west. He then tried to persuade them for the umpteenth time. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, do you really want to follow me to Gui sect? It's not too late to join Taiyin sect now. Don't do anything stupid. Then which sect do you want to join? Of course I have to go to Gui sect. He had already been rejected here. That's settled then. Let's go. Lone Moon headed to the left. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? This is an important matter for cultivation. Do you have to be so casual? Zhuo Shuming looked like he was about to break down. Seeing that the three of them had no intention of changing their minds, he could only sigh and follow them. He could only sigh and follow them. His whole person was like a frosted eggplant. As soon as he thought about how his three fellow Taoists might have their bright futures ruined because of a few words from him, he was almost drowning in guilt. Yet they acted as if nothing had happened. They followed him all the way to Gui sect. No matter how he tried to persuade them, they wouldn't listen. What's more, in order to match his cultivation level, they didn't choose to use sword kinesis. Instead, they followed him to the transportation array in the neighboring city. At that moment, he felt like a huge mountain of responsibility was pressing down on his head. He gritted his teeth. Forget it. If they really became fellow sect members in the future, he would protect them even if it cost him his life. They didn't put their trust in him in vain. Thus, Zhuo Shuming made a vow in his heart to protect the big boss. After the four of them left the city, they headed west. Because Zhuo Shuming was still a qi refinement cultivator, he wasn't familiar with sword kinesis. That was why they had to walk. But after walking for 6 to 8 hours, they still didn't see any sign of the neighboring city. We're not there yet. Shening calculated the time. It was almost dinner time. Can we rest now? I'm so tired. Tired my ass. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. He turned back and rolled his eyes at a certain lazy person. Get off chef's back before you say that. They hadn't walked a single step since they left the city. They were all carried by others. How could they have the cheek to say they were tired? Fellow Taoists. Zhuo Shuming paused and looked at the sky. Miss Shen is right. It's getting late. There's a village in front. Why don't we rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow? Lone Moon turned to look. Indeed, they could see a village in front of them. There was even a large field of spirit rice at the entrance of the village. Lone Moon nodded. The people in this village were probably cultivators too. It's just that they didn't have much potential. Their cultivation level wasn't high. That was why they could only grow some spirit herbs and spirit rice to survive. Villages like this were usually very friendly to cultivators like them who passed by. There were even courtyards in the village for people to rest in. Of course, they had to pay spirit stones. The few of them then walked towards the village. When they entered, they realized that the village seemed to have suffered some kind of natural disaster. There were cracks all over the ground. Half of the houses had collapsed. Most of the villagers were using sorcery to rebuild. Even the mountain at the side had collapsed. Soil rolled into the village and buried a large field of spirit rice. Was this an earthquake? Zhuo Shuming was shocked. He went in to ask. Indeed, there was an earthquake. Fortunately, the villagers were all cultivators. No one was injured. They directly rented a small courtyard at the entrance of the village. They planned to stay here for the night. Zhuo Shuming did not enter the house. Fellow Taoists, have a good rest. I have a few old acquaintances in this village. I want to visit them. He instructed them. With that, he directly entered the village. He seemed anxious to know about his friend's situation. However, he left for 4 hours. When they finished dinner, they didn't see him return. Chapter 631. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lone Moon. You have successfully joined the Taiyin sect. Zhuo Shuming smiled sincerely and said with some envy, I knew that fellow Taoist would definitely be able to get what you want. What the hell? You've already been killed. So what's the point of them joining the Tai Yin sect? In any case, you're someone who has ascended before. Aren't you embarrassed to be so weak? The corner of Loman's mouth twitched several times. He took a deep breath to suppress the curses in his heart. Fellow Taoists, what are your plans for the future? Zhou Shuming scratched his head in embarrassment. To tell you the truth, I heard that Gue Yi sect will be accepting disciples in Pinghua City in 3 days. Although Gue Yi sect's reputation is not as good as Tai Yin sect, it's still one of the 6 famous sections. That's why I wanted to try my luck there. Why didn't you say so earlier if there was a backup plan? Oh, is Gue Yi sect that good? Lone Moon asked. Of course. Zhou Shuming's eyes brightened. Although Gue Yi sect doesn't have as many disciples as Tai Yin sect, most of them are pill cultivators. There's even a 9th stage pill refiner in the sect. Among the 6 famous sects, Gue Yi sect is famous. 9th level alchemist? Lone Moon thought for a moment. Could he have been an alchemist in the past? That's right. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. The only level 9 alchemist in the entire Rainbow Light realm is in Gue Yi sect. The other sects have to seek help from Gue Yi sect if they want to refine high-grade elixirs of 9th grade and above. If that's the case, Gue Yi sect is indeed a good choice. Of course, and their requirements for disciples are different from the Tai Yin sect. They don't care about spirit roots. Disciples with different spirit roots can join as long as they pass the entrance test. That good? We'll go with you then. Then when? Zhou Shuming was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he stared at him. It's decided. How do I get to Pinghua City? No, fellow Taoist. Haven't you already joined the Tai Yin sect? It's our first time out, so we don't know the way. How about we go together? But you can, there's no time to lose. Why don't we set off now? Oh right, I forgot to introduce you. He pointed to the 2 people beside him and said, These 2 are my companions. This is I Ching, a sword cultivator. As for the other one, it's not important. Zhou Shuming. Shining. Mother asterisk her. Zhou Shuming was a little confused. Even he did not understand why the 3 of them, who had clearly passed Tai Yin sect's selection and had a bright future ahead of them, would mysteriously decide to follow him to Gue Yi sect after a short conversation. He thought back to their conversation and reflected on what he had said that had caused them to change their minds and choose Gue Yi sect over Tai Yin sect. But no matter how he explained, the few of them seemed determined to join Gue Yi sect. By the time they reacted, they were already on the way to Pinghua City. Zhou Shuming did not feel good at all. He looked at the 3 of them with guilt in his eyes, and looked like he wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. He didn't expect that a few casual words from him would have such an effect. Fellow Taoists, where do we go next? Lone Moon pointed at the intersection in front of them. Zhou Shuming looked at the 3 of them speechless. After a while he pointed to the left and said, Pinghua City is in the west. He then tried to persuade them for the umpteenth time. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, do you really want to follow me to Gue Yi sect? It's not too late to join Tai Yin sect now. Don't do anything stupid. Then which sect do you want to join? Of course I have to go to Gue Yi sect. He had already been rejected here. That's settled then. Let's go. Lone Moon headed to the left. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? This is an important matter for cultivation. Do you have to be so casual? Zhou Shuming looked like he was about to break down. Seeing that the 3 of them had no intention of changing their minds, he could only sigh and follow them. His whole person was like a frosted eggplant. As soon as he thought about how his 3 fellow Taoists might have their bright futures ruined because of a few words from him, he was almost drowning in guilt. Yet they acted as if nothing had happened. They followed him all the way to Gue Yi sect. No matter how he tried to persuade them, they wouldn't listen. What's more, in order to match his cultivation level, they didn't choose to use sword kinesis. Instead, they followed him to the transportation array in the neighboring city. At that moment, he felt like a huge mountain of responsibility was pressing down on his head. He gritted his teeth. Forget it. If they really became fellow sect members in the future, he would protect them even if it cost him his life. They didn't put their trust in him in vain. Thus, Zhuosheng made a vow in his heart to protect the big boss. After the four of them left the city, they headed west. Because Zhuosheng was still a qi refinement cultivator, he wasn't familiar with sword kinesis. That was why they had to walk. But after walking for 6 to 8 hours, they still didn't see any sign of the neighboring city. We're not there yet. Shening calculated the time. It was almost dinner time. Can we rest now? I'm so tired. Tired my ass. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. He turned back and rolled his eyes at a certain lazy person. Get off Chef's back before you say that. They hadn't walked a single step since they left the city. They were all carried by others. How dare they say they were tired? Fellow Taoists. Zhuosheng paused. He looked at the sky and said, Miss Shun is right. It's getting late. There's a village in front. Why don't we rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow? Lone Moon turned to look. Indeed, they could see a village in front of them. At one glance, there was a large field of spirit rice at the entrance of the village. Lone Moon nodded. The people in this village were probably cultivators too. It's just that they didn't have good qualifications. Their cultivation level wasn't high. That was why they could only grow some spirit herbs and spirit rice to survive. Villages like this were usually very friendly to cultivators like them who passed by. There were even courtyards in the village for people to rest in. Of course, they had to pay spirit stones. The few of them then walked towards the village. When they entered, they realized that the village seemed to have suffered some kind of natural disaster. There were cracks all over the ground. Half of the houses had collapsed. Most of the villagers were using sorcery to rebuild. Even the mountain at the side had collapsed. Soil rolled into the village and buried a large field of spirit rice. Was this an earthquake? Zhuosheng was shocked. He went in to ask. Indeed, there was an earthquake. Fortunately, the villagers were all cultivators. No one was injured. They directly rented a small courtyard at the entrance of the village. They planned to stay here for the night. Zhuosheng did not enter the house. Fellow Taoists, rest well. I have a few old acquaintances in this village. I want to visit them. He instructed them. With that, he directly entered the village. He seemed anxious to know about his friend's situation. However, he left for 4 hours. By the time they finished dinner, they didn't see him return. Chapter 632. Guiyi sect was not far. The spirit boat flew for less than an hour. They saw a large number of green floating peaks in front of them. The spirit boat flew straight towards the highest peak in the middle and stopped on the square in front of the hall. The many new disciples on the boat were stirred. They all walked to the side to look. Even Zhuosheng could not help but look out curiously. There were already 4 to 5 disciples standing in front of the hall. There were men and women dressed in the same green robes. Their cultivation levels were all at the foundation establishment stage. They all looked up at the slowly descending spirit boat. After the spirit boat stopped, they called for everyone to disembark. Lone Moon and the others were about to disembark when they suddenly felt a gaze directed towards them. There was a faint murderous intent. Lone Moon's heart sank. He subconsciously took a step to the side, avoiding that gaze. He turned and saw that the gaze came from the girl on the far right of the disciple below. There was still some floating spirit chi around her. It seemed like she had just reached the foundation establishment stage. But Lone Moon could see that she was actually in the late stages of foundation establishment. He just did not know what method she used to hide her cultivation. Looking closely, he realized that her gaze did not fall on them, but on Zhuosheng in front. There was some probing and evaluation in her gaze, as if she was looking at a commodity waiting to be evaluated. But the murderous intent from before had disappeared. Father Neo. I Ching obviously also noticed this person. He directly said in a low voice, "She is that person in the dense forest." Lone Moon was shocked. "Are you sure? This clearly looked like an ordinary cultivator." "Yes." I Ching nodded. "She saw us in the dense forest." Lone Moon reacted. "To avoid alerting the enemy, we hid." With that said, he directly pulled the 2 out of the crowd, raised his hand and set up a concealment array around them. The 3 figures instantly disappeared from the spirit boat. Everyone was in a hurry to disembark, so no one noticed that they disappeared. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, let's disembark too. Where are they? Zhuo Shuming turned, and was just about to call them to disembark together, but found that there was no one behind him. The three people who were just behind him had disappeared. He looked anxious, subconsciously looking for them. Hey, what are you waiting for? We have arrived at the sect, quickly disembark. The disciple controlling the spirit boat saw that he did not disembark and urged. No, senior brother, I came with 3 friends. There's no one left on the ship, the disciple replied. I think they've already gone down. Zhuo Shuming then got off the boat with a confused look on his face. He kept searching in the crowd, but could not find anyone, and the woman below kept looking in Zhuo Shuming's direction. That invader walked right at the front, but at the moment he turned, his gaze still seemed to sweep in Zhuo Shuming's direction. Lone Moon and the others who had already concealed their figures and auras also followed behind him and walked in. The hall was already filled with people. Most of them were nascent soul cultivators. It seemed like they were the leaders of Guiyi sect. The 2 people with the highest cultivation were at the soul formation stage. There was a hint of elixir aura on them. They should be core cultivators. After that invader let everyone into the hall, he walked directly towards a nascent soul cultivator on the right. He called out sweetly, "Daddy," and then stood obediently behind him. There are quite a number of disciples joining Guiyi sect this time. The one sitting in the middle was probably the sect master of Guiyi sect. He glanced at the hundreds of new disciples in the hall, then smiled at everyone in the hall and said, "Elders, do you have anyone you like to take in as a disciple?" The nascent soul cultivators in the hall then stood up one by one and started to choose disciples. Almost everyone picked a few people, although they were all disciples of Guiyi sect. To be able to be under the tutelage of a nascent soul cultivator and have a master to guide them, it was naturally much better than ordinary disciples cultivating on their own. So the people who were chosen were naturally pleasantly surprised. After bowing, they stood behind the nascent soul cultivators. In less than an hour, the number of disciples in the hall was reduced by a quarter. Lone Moon looked carefully and realized that the invader's gaze had been fixed on Zhuo Shuming from the start. His gaze was full of probing. It seemed like their previous guess was right. This invader's motive was related to Zhuo Shuming, but for some reason, the other party did not make a move. It was as if he was waiting for something. Zhuo Shuming, however, did not notice anything. He took the time to look at the people around him from time to time, looking anxious to find someone. Until everyone had chosen, that invader did not make a sound. Elders, since you have already chosen, let's end here for today. The Guiyi sect master in the middle stood up and looked at the remaining disciples. The remaining people are the outer sect disciples of our sect. You may leave. The sect master was about to wave his hand when the soul formation cultivator on the left suddenly spoke. Wait! Chapter 633. Uncle Master Tiani? The sect master faltered, turning around respectfully and cupping his fists. My Danxia mountain is lacking a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. Let's pick one. That soul formation cultivator said casually, his gaze sweeping across the new disciples in the hall, finally landing on Zhuo Shuming, who was at the 7th level of Qi refinement, pointing. Him. All the disciples faltered, looking at Zhuo Shuming enviously. Although he was only looking after the spirit herbs, and not an official disciple, he was the soul formation supremacy with the highest cultivation in Guiyi sect. Just a single word of guidance was already extremely beneficial to him. Lone Moon couldn't help but take a look at Zhuo Shuming. He was just about to sigh. Although this kid was naive and sweet, his luck was indeed not bad, as expected of someone who could ascend. In the next moment, a strange electronic voice suddenly sounded. Ding! Mission! Destroy the male lead's opportunity to enter Danxia Mountain. Stop the male lead from ascending. Help the host's wish to avenge. Go host. Quickly transmigrate. System 001 has high hopes for you. Don't worry 001. I've already transmigrated to so many worlds I know. A scumbag like Zhuo Shuming. Even if there is no mission, I will also avenge the host. Shening. I Ching. Lone Moon. What the hell was this sudden sound? Did they forget about Guangong's broadcast? Instantly, he somewhat understood how Shining felt when she met Feng Ying. This broadcast was really F*King loud. But it seemed like other than the three of them, no one else could hear it at all. Grandmaster Tianyi, is there anything special about this disciple? That invader suddenly spoke, looking up at the Soul Formation Core cultivator with a naive expression. To actually make you personally ask to bring him to Danxia Mountain. Little E, don't be rude in front of Uncle Master. The moment she spoke, the nascent soul cultivator beside her immediately chided. It's all right. That Soul Formation Core cultivator called Tianyi glanced at her, not angry. Instead he spoke in a good mood. It's not that there's anything special about this disciple. It's just that I need a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. There's no requirement for cultivation. Anyone is fine. He's the highest cultivation among this group of Qi refinement disciples, so I chose him. Grandmaster, what you're saying is wrong. The invader blinked and pouted, acting even more innocent. You are a soul formation supremacy of our Guiyi sect. Which of the senior brothers on Danxia Mountain wasn't an outstanding talent? Even if it was just a guardian spirit herb, it was still a great opportunity for the disciples of the sect. I feel that Grandmaster should also choose someone with good aptitude. Only in this way will the reputation of Danxia Mount not be tarnished. Chapter 634. A system that can traverse planes? Shen Jing's eyes darkened. She thought about it for a while before answering. I have indeed seen a system with such a function. But it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that they traverse planes. At most, they only project a portion of the soul over. Project. Lone Moon faltered. What do you mean? They actually do not have the ability to forcibly traverse planes. Shen Jing said in a low voice. So they will find some consciousness in the chaos that has not been completely swallowed to reside. Then from the chaos, they will sense the plane's original source that is similar to the host. They will capture a portion of the consciousness and project it into the plane to steal other plane's original source. Their goal is the plane's original source? You can say that. Shen Jing continued. But their power is too weak. The amount of original source that they can steal is very limited. It's not even the amount of a complete soul. And because it is an illegal invasion, this thing is very easy to be discovered by the rules. So it is very difficult to take away that tiny bit of original source, unless the soul is willing, Lone Moon blurted out. It wants to take away the main soul of the person who has possessed it. Which means that there are actually 3 parts in that body now. One is the original soul of that body, one is the invading system, and the last is the remnant consciousness that the system captured from the chaos to fuse with the main soul? That's right. Shen Jing nodded. This thing is like a parasite of the plane. Although it's only projecting a part of the foreign consciousness into the plane, the illegal invasion will still cause a certain amount of chaos in the plane, leaving a gap for the invasion. So the places they invade are all very hidden. It's the river of forgetfulness. I Ching suddenly remembered the hole that suddenly appeared in the river of forgetfulness. They invaded from the original source of the river of forgetfulness. That's right, Shen Jing said. There are many souls in the original source. It's very difficult to detect one more or one less. What's more, it was only a similar portion of the foreign consciousness that entered. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces both darkened. Indeed, if Roasted Chicken Gal had not suddenly fallen in, and Little Shorty had not happened to be at Invincible Sect. Such a small hole, even they did not sense it. It was indeed very difficult to detect. And the reason that the system could secretly go back in time in the small world was also because of the impact when it broke through the plane. If Rabbit had not coincidentally gone to fetch Swishumming, they would not have noticed what happened in the lower realm. Then how do we solve it? Shenning suddenly asked. Of course, before it fuses with the souls of this plane, we'll just crush it to death, Shen Jing said matter-of-factly. If we don't smack this parasite to death, are we going to keep it alive for the new year? The 3 of them. Seems like it's too late. Don't tell me you've already fused with it and parasitized living beings? A look of surprise flashed across Shen Jing's face. Sister Jing, we were just a little late. The corner of Lomun's mouth twitched, and he smiled awkwardly. Is there any other way? The disdain on Shenjing's face deepened. She snorted coldly and said, You call yourselves managers? Is the world's consciousness blind? The three of them. Please don't stab me in the back. Not everyone is a cheat. There's no other way. She gave each of them a look that said you're done for, and continued. Either you destroy the soul together with the parasite and the foreign consciousness. Either you wait for the host to completely gain the recognition of the host's soul, then leave the host's body, and escape with the host's main soul to the next plane. Leave the host's body? Shening suddenly raised her head, and looked at the light screen in front of her. Sister, you mean to say that the host will separate itself from the host's soul when it escapes this plane? Shenjing turned back to look at her. The disdain in her eyes faded a little. That's right. But since it has already decided to leave, it must be fully prepared. You only have that moment to grab it. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces lit up, and they heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. It was good that they could leave. Actually, the troublesome thing was that system. They had too little information about it, and they had no idea what tricks it had up its sleeves. As for the foreign consciousness that fused with the main soul, there would always be a way to separate it again. Thank you, Sister Jing. The three of them thanked her, and after being lectured by Shen Jing a few more times, they hung up. Master, what should we do now? I Ching turned to look at Shening. Wait for the invader to leave this plane on its own? Shening nodded and said, We can speed it up a little. What do you mean? Lone Moon interrupted. How to speed it up? Doesn't that system have a mission? She habitually took out a fruit and reminded them. The two of them faltered for a moment, and recalled the system's public broadcast. It seemed to have given the consciousness it brought a mission to find Zhou Shuming for revenge. Wasn't this mission issued by the invader to get the original owner's consent, so that it would be easier to extract the main soul? It was an illegal invasion. Only the main soul could be taken away if it was willing. This mission was a transaction. He thought of something and frowned again. Don't tell me you want to help the invader to deal with $2 Zhou, and then let it leave as soon as possible, so that you can catch it? I Ching subconsciously frowned. He was obviously unwilling to do so as well. Putting aside the fact that Zhou Shuming was not a bad person, from their standpoint, they did not want to turn around and push the invader. Shening took a bite of the fruit, and looked up at the two of them before asking, Why should we help it? Can't we just destroy it? Nonsense. Lone Moon retorted subconsciously. If it does not fulfill the original owner's wish, the main soul will definitely not be willing to leave with it. The invader will naturally not leave. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as if thinking of something. His eyes widened abruptly. You mean to stop its mission, and let them fight amongst themselves? The more the main soul cannot get what it wants, the more it will not be willing to leave with the invader. I Ching also reacted. By then, the main soul will naturally automatically resist the foreign consciousness and the system. Perhaps we don't need to do anything, and they can separate. That's not for sure. Lone Moon shook his head and said in a low voice. That system can find such a loophole to come and proves that it knows very well that it cannot stay in the plane for too long, in order to avoid being detected by the rules and managers. So if it finds out that it cannot get the main soul's approval no matter what, it will choose to leave the plane prematurely. I Ching's expression was delighted. Lone Moon also heaved a sigh of relief. All right, let's do that. Compared to helping the invader complete its mission, it was better to take the initiative to slap its face. Speaking of which, Lone Moon thought of something. That silly $2 Zhou. What did he do to the other party before he ascended? To make that soul willing to sell the main soul to the invader, just to seek revenge on him. By right, someone who could ascend to immortality, and not be struck to death by tribulation lightning, shouldn't be a very evil person. I Ching faltered, and directly pinched his fingers to calculate. After a while he said, She was killed by Zhou Shuming in her previous life. What? Holy shit, there really was a feud. Lone Moon subconsciously calculated as well. After a while his expression darkened again. It was true that that person died in Zhou Shuming's hands in her previous life, but the number of lives she killed was even more uncountable. There were even her blood relatives, including all the disciples of Gui sect. Chapter 635. The intruder's mission was to take revenge on Zhou Shuming and stop him from ascending. It was easy to ruin this mission. The better Zhou Shuming lived, the more aggrieved the intruder would be. It would be best if he ascended in front of her and let the intruder experience the feeling of being unable to do anything to him, even though she couldn't stand him. But now Zhou Shuming's golden finger scoop's scale had already been snatched away. The opportunity to become a disciple of a soul formation supremacy was also ruined. Although with his temperament, it was not impossible for him to ascend, even if the intruder did not attack him. Compared to his previous life, it would be much slower for him to ascend. So the best way was for them to join Gui sect and interfere secretly. On one hand, they could keep an eye on the intruder, and on the other hand, they could slap the intruder in the face. But here came the problem. That day in the dense forest, that intruder had already seen me and Chef, Lone Moon said. Lone Moon frowned and said, "If we join Gui sect just like that, we might inadvertently alert the system. That would not be good." They left in a hurry that day and did not hide themselves. It was indeed very likely that they would be recognized. "That's not difficult," I Ching said in a low voice. "Just create an illusion or change your appearance." "No." Lone Moon shook his head. "Illusion and illusion spells are convenient, but it's hard to guarantee that the other party won't recognize us. Don't forget that that is an intruder. Who knows what tricks he has? They could even escape from Chef that day. Then what do you think we should do? Apart from the two of us, there's only..." He turned to look at a certain someone who was sprawled lazily on the table. "Forget it. Let's do it with the two of us. Shening, son of AB *TCH. I think we should just use the body of heavenly lightning and change our appearance," he suggested. "The body of heavenly lightning is not a spell. The change in appearance is permanent for cultivators. But of course that doesn't include us. Confusing the intruder is enough. After this is over, we can release the lightning spirit energy in our bodies and change back anytime we want." I Ching nodded. Indeed, this was the safest. "But the three of us are too big of a target." He thought for a moment, then continued. "Although that intruder is strange, it's enough for one person to watch two bucks swa. Let's discuss who's going to compete. Wait, why are you two hiding so far away?" Before he could finish his words, he saw that the master and disciple, who were originally surrounding him, had instantly moved 30 feet away. "Let's vote. I vote for Father Nyo. I vote for Father Nyo too." "All right, Father Nyo has more than half of the votes. It's decided then. Father Nyo, you can do it. The purified body will not be a problem for you." Bringing alternate accounts to level up and whatnot, Father Nyo is super professional. For all, Eloneman. Motherf *Ker. Does such a vote have any meaning? You guys just want to King slack off. So why don't you just push it to me? In an instant, he felt an urge to teach the brat a lesson. Get it straight. Just whose plane is this? Hello? You too. Just as he was about to retort, the sky suddenly darkened. Thunderclouds instantly appeared, and a thick power of the rule hovered above his head. "Wait, Chef, what are you doing?" Chef raised his hand and conjured a seal. In the next moment, a bolt of heavenly lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky. With a loud boom, it struck right on top of Loneman's head. On the side of his Dharma robe, a trace of burnt yellow color appeared. Silence fell. "Father Nyo, the lightning spiritual power around you is about to dissipate. Do you need me to strike another bolt?" "Strike your sister. For all. Hey, you can really do it." Loneman's hair stood on end in anger. He took out a spirit stone and threw it over. "Get it straight, whose plane is this? There's also the purified body nascent soul tribulation lightning. Why the hell are you striking the ascension tribulation lightning? So what if it's a manager?" "I see. Then I'll change to something else." "What did you say?" Boom. Following that, a bolt of nascent soul tribulation lightning struck down. Once again, it accurately struck Loneman's head. Lone Moon, who was struck again. A while later, Chef, I don't think Father Nyo has changed. Did you strike the wrong one again? Master, I haven't seen the tribulation lightning of the lower realm for too long. I'm indeed not too sure. Why don't strike a few more? Yes, Master. No problem, Master. The fan in Lonmun's hand turned into a long sword. I'm going to kill you two little bastards. Gui Dai Lonmun, with his temporary appearance, successfully blended into the new group of outer sect disciples of Gui sect. He successfully moved into the room next to two Buxswa. Compared to official disciples, outer sect disciples obviously did not have that kind of targeted teaching. Not to mention inner sect disciples who had master's guidance. They basically relied on self-study. There would be golden core cultivators coming to teach them once every 5 days. Apart from that, they had to complete some sect missions every month. It could be said that outer sect disciples were basically left to fend for themselves. Of course, if they worked hard, they could become official disciples after they successfully reached foundation establishment. Then, according to their specialties, they could enter the various peaks to learn the corresponding cultivation techniques. To put it simply, outer sect disciples were disciples who did odd jobs. Hence, the management was very loose. Chapter 636. The three of them felt a little guilty about disappearing without saying a word. They had thought that it would be strange for him to not be able to find them for a few days at most. What's more, they were not very familiar with each other to begin with. They just didn't expect Zhuo Shuming to be so persistent. Not only did he search the entire Gui sect, he even seemed to be expanding outwards. And the more he searched, the more anxious he became. It seemed like he would not stop until he found them. Lonmun felt that in order not to affect his cultivation, and to complete his grand goal of fighting the invasion, he had to find a chance to bluff. No, to explain to him. So early the next morning, he stopped a certain someone who was about to go out. 2 bucks. Fellow Taoists Zhuo Shuming faltered for a moment before turning back. This, junior brother, how are you doing? Why are you stopping me? I just entered the sect and live next door to you. That's why I came to say hello. Lonmun pointed to the room next door and glanced at the stack of portraits in his hands. Brother Zhuo, are you planning to go out? That's right. He nodded and said with a serious expression. I plan to go down the mountain to the nearby immortal city to put up some notices. Notices? Lonmun faltered for a moment. He took a closer look and realized that there was an additional line of words above the portraits. It was boldly added, missing person notice. 4 eye-catching words. The 3 of them. He really wouldn't give up until he found them. It couldn't be helped that he was too honest. Lonmun's mouth twitched, and he immediately looked away. I saw that you've been looking for these 3 people for a few days. Could they be your relatives? That's not it. He smiled. They're my friends. Speaking of which, I've only known them for less than 3 days. We agreed to join Gui sect together, but I don't know why. The day we came to the sect, they suddenly disappeared. Oh, so that's how it is. I think they might have other important matters to attend to. Lonmun advised in a low voice. What's more, you guys just met by chance. Why do you have to waste so much effort, Brother Zhuo? It wasn't easy for you to enter Gui sect. You should work hard on your cultivation. This junior brother doesn't know the inside story. Please don't spout nonsense. He was suddenly enraged. He turned to glare at him and said disapprovingly, They are the friends that I Zhuo recognize. Now that they have suddenly disappeared, how can I not investigate? It would be fine if they were safe. But what if they encountered danger and were isolated and helpless? If I sit back and do nothing, how can I be worthy of being called a friend? His face was filled with anger, as if the other party had just said something to humiliate him. He said word by word, I Zhuo Shuming am not that kind of despicable person. What's more, they saved my life. What life-saving grace? Was he talking about that day in the forest when he conveniently dragged him back? They really didn't go there to save him. And he thought of something, and his expression became even more anxious. Their sudden disappearance might have something to do with saving me that day. Could it be that he thought that their disappearance was due to the revenge of the person who stole the treasure that day? Brother Catch, you really have a big imagination. He said that my brother's this fellow Taoist. He was obviously angry. He didn't even address Lone Moon as junior brother. He directly said, I still have important matters to attend to. I won't accompany you any longer. With that said, he looked at Lone Moon meaningfully. He snorted and turned to leave in a huff. Was he being looked down upon by him? He definitely was. Seeing that he was about to walk away with the pile of notices, Lone Moon sighed and said loudly, Fellow Taoists, please wait. You haven't returned the 2 spirit stones you lent me the other time. I lent you spirit stones? Zhou Shuming stopped in his tracks and subconsciously took out his bag of spirit stones. After a long while, he poured out 3 spirit stones and handed them over. I'm sorry. I used all my spirit stones yesterday to ask someone to help me find them. I only have 3 left. When I have more. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked up at the person in front of him. His eyes slowly widened as if he had just understood. The huge pile of notices in his hands fell to the ground. You are. Lone Moon nodded. It's just what you think. Fortunately, he wasn't too stupid. He finally reacted. Zhou Shuming was completely stunned. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. He then said tentatively, Don't tell me you really. Yes. You are. Miss Shen? Lone Moon. Shim my ass. 2 soft snickers sounded. Lone Moon turned to the side and glared at a certain 2 people whose shoulders were shaking crazily. You 2 little bastards, shut up. Don't laugh. He directly shouted at them through voice transmission. Then, he slapped the other party's shoulder with a frown. Cold air rushed out of his body. He gritted his teeth and said, How do you think I look like Shun? Are you King blind? Try calling her miss again. You can't tell if she's a man or a woman. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon? Zhou Shuming trembled and immediately changed his words. At least you know what's good for you. Lone Moon snorted and let go of his hand. He took the 3 spirit stones from Zhou Shuming's hand and said, Remember, you still owe me 1. Oh. Zhou Shuming was obviously still in shock. He nodded blankly and scanned the complete stranger in front of him. Brother Lone Moon, why did you suddenly become like this? It's a long story. Lone Moon opened his mouth to make up a story. Wait. Zhou Shuming suddenly thought of something. He looked around and saw that there was no one around. He then stepped aside and said, Brother Lone Moon, let's go inside and talk. With that, he walked quickly into the house and closed the door and windows before continuing. Brother Lone Moon, why did you guys suddenly disappear that day? Lone Moon's eyes darted around, and he started to make up stories. Actually, we didn't really want to join Gui sect. After we boarded the ship that day, we regretted it. That's why we left. I see. Dumb Zhou Shuming believed him without hesitation. He nodded and said, I knew it. Based on your cultivation, joining Tai Yin sect was the best choice. It's normal for you to hesitate. Oh yes, where are Miss Shun and fellow Taoist Ziqing? Why are you back now? And why did your face suddenly change? If I said, I accidentally fell down on the spirit boat that day, would you believe me? Lone Moon asked casually. So you fell down? Zhou Shuming suddenly understood. I was wondering why your cultivation level had regressed. So it's because you were injured. Is it serious? Have you recovered? Will it affect your foundation? Lone Moon. I Ching. Shening. He just said it casually. You really believed him? You must be a palace level dumb by Tian. Then Miss Shen and fellow Taoists I Ching aren't here. Is it because they've already joined Tai Yin sect? Zhou Shuming automatically filled in the missing invisible 2 people. He even found an excuse for Lone Moon to return to Gui sect and not be chosen by Tai Yin sect. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. A moment later, he patted his shoulder with a gratified expression. I said $2. Was $2 referring to him? You're the most worry-free dumb by Tian I've ever met. He didn't even need to think about making up a story. Zhou Shuming did it himself. This is a sensible friend. Forget it. I don't want the remaining spirit stone. Chapter 637. It's been hard on you these few days. Lone Moon looked at him and thanked him sincerely. "I'm sorry, I disappeared without notifying you." At the end of the day, it was their fault, causing him to search for so many days in vain. "Brother Lone Moon, don't say that." Zhuo did not mind at all. "I wanted to find it myself. It has nothing to do with you. Besides, haven't you been injured these few days? It's normal that you didn't notify me in time." He felt even more guilty. What was going on? "You've just entered the sect. Just cultivate in peace these few days?" He scanned him from head to toe. "I see that you have a triple spirit root of water, wood and fire. Your foundation is quite solid. Foundation establishment should not be a problem. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me." After all, he was someone who taught Fatty, an all-round cultivator. His face lit up. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon used to be a foundation establishment cultivator. Although his cultivation had regressed now, he was definitely more familiar with foundation establishment than him. With his guidance, his cultivation would be less crooked, so he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon. I have some questions." "Don't stand on ceremony, speak." The two chatted about cultivation for a while. Zhuo naturally did not have heaven-defying qualifications like Fatty. There were many simple questions that he did not understand. Fortunately, when Invincible Sect was first established, Yu Hong and the others did not have high qualifications. He was already used to teaching them. Zhuo listened very seriously, perhaps because the questions that had piled up for many years were finally answered. The spirit qi in his body was faintly floating. He believed that his cultivation would improve soon. The two of them chatted for 4 hours, and it was almost noon. The master and disciple who had been listening at the side had already returned to their rooms to cook. Lone Moon calculated the time for lunch and ended this cultivation session. "Let's end here for today." Lone Moon stood up. "If you understand what I said, foundation establishment should not be difficult." It was time to go back and snatch food. "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon." Zhuo also stood up, bowing to him with some excitement. "With Brother Lone Moon's guidance, I really feel enlightened." "That's good." Lone Moon smiled. "After talking for 4 hours, if you still didn't understand, then I have to question your intelligence. Then I'll go back to my room first. Take care, Brother Lone Moon." Lone Moon hurriedly stood up to send him off. Lone Moon turned and was about to step out of the room when he suddenly thought of something. He could not help but turn back and ask, "Do you really believe that my appearance changed because I fell off the spirit boat?" Zhuo faltered for a moment, then suddenly smiled and thought about it before replying, "I treat you guys as friends. I was anxious to find you guys just to make sure you were safe. Now that I know, everything else isn't important anymore." What did it matter whether it was true or not? He didn't need to know. Lone Moon looked at him with some surprise. It turned out that he did not believe the reason that was full of loopholes. He only believed in his own judgment in choosing friends. Who would have thought that he would be so much more perceptive than he had imagined? It was no wonder that he was able to ascend previously. However, he was still a naive person. That people could rest assured about. It was not in vain that they had chosen to help him ascend. However, he was so stupid. After he ascended, he should let Yu Hong join the sect. Otherwise, if he was sold, he would probably have to help count spirit stones. He sighed and walked out directly. Just as he was about to turn to rush for lunch next door, he saw a Gui disciple in a blue robe walking in. "Zhuo, is Zhuo here?" The moment he entered the courtyard, he opened his mouth and shouted several times. His tone was full of impatience. He was holding an account book in his hand. With this shout, many disciples who were in the same courtyard came out of curiosity. "Isn't this senior brother he who is in charge of the outer sect?" A disciple greeted. "Why are you here personally? Are you going to assign us a mission?" "There's no rush for you guys. I'm looking for someone called Zhuo," that person said. "Senior brother he?" Zhuo also recognized the person who came in. He immediately walked out of the house behind Lone Moon and went forward to greet him with cupped fists. "Greetings, senior brother he. I wonder why senior brother has called for me." That cultivator with the surname, he scanned him up and down arrogantly. "You're the new Zhuo?" "That's right." He nodded. Something flashed in that person's eyes. He lowered his head to look at the account book and said, "From today onwards, you'll be in charge of the northernmost spirit field in the back mountain. Every 3 months, you'll hand in a batch of low-level spirit herbs. Remember, it must not be less than 50 stalks. Plant spirit herbs." Xueshuming was stunned for a moment, his face full of disbelief. Lone Moon, who was at the side, also frowned. He stepped forward and said, "Senior brother, I remember that new outer sect disciples only have to be responsible for harvesting spirit herbs and the like. When can they directly start planting spirit fields? There's not enough people planting spirit fields in the back mountain. Naturally, disciples have to fill in the gaps. What's more, that disciple with the surname," he glanced at Xueshuming and snorted coldly. Chapter 638. As a sect famous for its pills, Guiyi sect naturally had the majority of pill cultivators. More than 80% of them were pill cultivators. But pill cultivators were the most expensive of all cultivators. That was because pill cultivators mainly relied on pill refinement to advance. And pill refinement required materials. The most common materials were all kinds of spirit herbs. Moreover, the materials used for every type of pill were different. There were thousands of pills in the world. The higher the grade of the pill, the more expensive the materials used. It could be said that the early stages of pill cultivation were practically a living spirit stone burning machine. And with so many disciples in Guiyi sect, there were even more low-level disciples. Hence, the demand for low-level spirit herbs was even greater. Of course, these could not all be bought from outside. Hence, the sect planted a large spirit field at the foot of the mountain. It was specially used to plant all kinds of low-level spirit herbs. And these spirit fields were usually handed over to experienced outer sect disciples to plant. The sect would provide the seeds. After the seeds matured, they would take a portion of the fruits. The remaining disciples could keep it for their own medicine, or exchange it for spirit stones from the sect. This seemed like a good job. But spirit fields could not be planted by just any disciple. Spirit herbs were different from mortal herbs. They had very high requirements for the soil, weather, and even spirit chi. They needed a lot of patience and time. Moreover, every spirit herb had a different planting method. Ordinary people would not be able to master it in a short period of time. Not to mention that Xueshuming was a new disciple for less than a month. Even the most talented disciple would not be able to plant anything without 3 to 4 years. This was also the reason why Lone Moon only dared to hand over the task of planting spirit herbs to Radish, and not the other disciples. Radish itself was a plant spirit. Only it knew what those immortal herbs needed and how to grow well. Although they were prepared, Lone Moon and Xueshuming were still shocked when they saw the spirit fields they were given. When they arrived at the spirit fields, they realized that the situation was worse than they imagined. They were given a piece of spirit field at the edge. Beside it was a stone mountain. The soil was very dry and the spirit chi was pitifully thin. More importantly, rocks would roll down from the mountain from time to time. Although it was said to be 2 acres, half of the land had already been filled with rocks. This was not even a mortal field, much less a spirit field. How could this be? Xueshuming was completely dumbfounded. He stared in disbelief at the overgrown weeds in front of him, and turned to look at the disciple who was leading the way. "Senior brother, have we come to the wrong place? Is this the spirit field we're supposed to plant?" "Yeah, this is the spiritual field of the Qian position." The disciple leading the way nodded and couldn't help but mutter, "This piece of land has been barren for decades. It's impossible to grow anything. I don't know why the sect suddenly sent people here." He looked up at the two of them and shook his head with some pity, but he didn't ask any more questions and directly handed over the bag in his hand. "Here, these are the seeds for the spirit herb you want to plant. Remember to hand over 50 low-level spirit herbs in 3 months." After saying that, he didn't stay and turned to leave. Xueshuming took the bag of seeds, and his eyes became even more confused. He subconsciously opened the bag and looked inside. The seeds in the bag were only the size of a palm, and there were red, green, black, and all kinds of colors. It was obvious that they were not the same species. "How can this be?" Swashuming was shocked. It was bad enough that the spirit field was barren, but why were the seeds different? It would be strange if they could grow anything like this. That senior brother must have taken the wrong ones. I'll go and get a new bag from him. He closed the bag and turned to leave. Come back. Lone Moon reached out and pulled him back. He snatched the bag from his hand and rolled his eyes. Are you really stupid or are you pretending to be? Just look at this spirit field. And you know that he's doing this on purpose. If you go back just like this, will he care about you? Swashuming faltered, his expression full of confusion. But this is the first time I've met that senior brother. I've never offended him before. Why is he targeting me like this? Who said he's the one targeting you? Lone Moon shook his head. It's not him. He was even more confused. But I've never offended anyone else? Lone Moon frowned. But he didn't know how to explain. Could he just say that he was targeted by an intruder? He could only sigh. Forget it. It doesn't matter who it is. The most important thing for you now is to work hard on your cultivation. When you're strong enough, you naturally won't be afraid of these petty tricks. Even if you chase after him now, you probably won't get any answers. Swashuming clenched his fists. A hint of struggle flashed across his face. After a moment of silence, he said, I still want to go. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Since I've entered Guei sect, as a disciple, planting spirit fields is part of my duty. I have no complaints about this. But these seeds. His gaze darkened. I don't know why the other party is doing this. But planting spirit fields concerns the sect. I have to get to the bottom of it. His gaze was clear and determined. One could see through him at a glance. He had a naive and stubborn look. Lone Moon did not speak. After some thought, he stepped aside. If he wanted to go, then go. Very soon, he would discover that everything in this world could not be explained clearly. Brother Lone Moon, don't worry. I'll be back soon. Swashuming instructed. Then, he turned and chased in the direction that the disciple who led the way had disappeared in. Lone Moon sighed. Indeed, he was still too young. He looked down at the bag of seeds in his hand. Then he handed it to Chef. Let's begin. Me. Chef faltered. He looked at the seeds in his hand in shock. He only knew how to stir-fry them. If not you, me? He glared at him. What do you think I called you here for? He was a prodigal who only knew how to spend money every day. What was wrong with doing some work? I've never planted spirit herbs before. Chef opened the bag. Didn't Radish do this before? How about I ask Radish to come down? What Radish? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Radish was a flower maniac. If he asked it to come down, it would expose the two of them. Just pluck the grass and scatter the seeds. You call this planting spirit herbs? Chef looked at the seeds in his hand suspiciously. On account of the food expenses, he could not refute. He could only take the seeds and walk into the field where the grass was taller than a person. He thought for a moment. In the next moment, sword chi exploded from his body. Like a sharp knife, it swept toward the entire spirit field. For a moment, the weeds were like chopped chives, falling to the ground. The soil on the ground was overturned by the sword chi attack. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual field, which was so deep that even the mud could not be seen, had become bare. Even the ground had been turned over. I Ching then opened the bag. He grabbed a handful of seeds and scattered them. He did not care if he scattered them evenly. He tipped the bag down and shook it twice. Then he turned and walked back. It's done. It took less than 2 minutes. Lone Moon did not seem to care about how he planted them. Can they grow like this? Chef asked. It was rare for him to be so nosy. Of course. Lone Moon turned back to look at him. Then he looked up at the sky meaningfully. Then he replied, You planted them. They dare not grow. Chapter 639. Swashuming did not expect that it was just as Lone Moon said. Even when he went to the door, he did not get any answers, and was even chased out. He vaguely sensed that even the steward of the outer sect did not know who gave him this task. He instantly felt a little disheartened, and unwillingly had to return to the spirit field. But that piece of land could not even be considered a spirit field. Not to mention planting spirit herbs. It was impossible to even revert it back to a field that could be planted. Because of this, he felt even more guilty towards Lone Moon, who was implicated by him. Once he returned, he bowed towards him. Brother Lone Moon, I'm sorry, it's me who even. Before he finished speaking, he saw that the ground that was originally filled with weeds, as tall as a person, had completely changed. The weeds were gone, the ground had been turned over, and there was a fresh smell of soil all around. This land, how did it turn over so quickly, Brother Lone Moon, you, so fast? What happened to the hard soil that was extremely difficult to cultivate? Lone Moon stood up nonchalantly before nodding and answering. The land is already planted. Come. Let's talk about cultivation. Hurry up and upgrade the face-slapping set. Shumming was dumbfounded, completely unable to recover from the huge change in front of him. What? Lone Moon glanced at him and said with a serious expression, with your cultivation, if you don't work hard, are you going to wait for your cultivation to grow naturally? You cannot slack off on cultivation. Hurry up and meditate and cultivate. Okay. Shumming was shocked by the look and suddenly forgot what he wanted to ask. Subconsciously, he sat down on the ground and began to absorb spirit chi. He did not know if it was an illusion, but for some reason, he felt that the spirit chi around him had become thicker. Even faintly felt that it was even thicker than the main peak. He could not help but enter the state of cultivation. Brother Lone Moon was right. No matter what was going on with this spirit field, his priority now was to improve his own strength. Only when he was strong enough would others not be able to bully him. Other than completing the sex mission, he had to work hard on cultivation. But this spirit field, even if it was reclaimed, the spirit herbs would probably not grow well. He would do his best to plant it. If he really could not hand over the 50 spirit herbs, he would bear all the punishment from the sect. Having made up his mind, he concentrated on his cultivation. However, what happened next directly messed up all his plans, and even made him a little dumbfounded. He originally thought that it would be pretty good if a dozen or so low-level spirit herbs could grow on such a piece of land. But when he arrived the next day, he discovered that the originally barren ground had sprouted a large patch of crispy green shoots overnight. Each shoot carried spiritual energy, and there was no doubt that they were spirit plants. It was far more than just 50. He was overjoyed. This was simply a miracle. With such a large batch, if they took care of it carefully, they might be able to gather enough to hand over. Unfortunately, his teammate Lone Moon obviously didn't think so. Brother Lone Moon, I didn't expect it to really germinate. The spirit chi in the morning is dense, and spirit plants like water. Let's go get some water now. There's no need, he replied. Shumming faltered. Before he could finish his words, the surroundings suddenly darkened. A dark cloud floated over, and a light rain poured down, instantly drenching the entire spiritual field. Shumming. This is too much of a coincidence. But the rain was not entirely a good thing. If there's too much rain, it will easily damage the shoots. Let's dig a canal. No need, Lone Moon replied with the same two words. Indeed, in the next moment, the rain stopped and the clouds dispersed. It was as if the clouds were really just there to water the plants. Shumming. The key was that this was not the first or second time. What happened next completely toppled his worldview. Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already grown. I think we need to fertilize them. Let's go look for some plant ash. No need. A strong gust of wind blew and dust flew. The strong wind carried a layer of black ash across the entire spiritual field, leaving a thick layer of plant ash. Shumming. That works too. Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already started to grow. This situation is extremely prone to insects. Why don't we ask for some insect-repellent talismans from the senior brother in charge? No need. A wave of bird cries sounded. Instantly, a large flock of spirit birds flew over from afar and landed on the ground. Then they focused on searching for insects to eat. Shumming. Holy shit. Sigma Q. He suddenly felt like he could not help at all. These spirit herbs were not planted by them. They must have been planted by the heavens. _3 As for the spirit plants in the field, they grew larger and larger, more and more vigorous, more and more pleasing to the eye, and the longer they grew, the more their shapes became wrong. Brother Lone Moon, this is a second stage 2-leaf fresh herb, right? Why did it grow 4 leaves? Could it be a mutation? Brother Lone Moon, that's a penetrating wood lotus. I remember it was a 3rd stage one. Why did it evolve into a 4th stage one? Brother Lone Moon, is this a purple spirit ginseng? Look at the leaves. They seem to be bigger than a 1,000-year-old one. Brother Lone Moon, that stalk. Logically speaking, it was very difficult to mutate and evolve spirit herbs. Some people would not even see one stalk in their entire lives. However, upon closer inspection, although this spiritual field was filled with spirit plants ranging from grade 1 to grade 4, every single one of them was either mutated or evolved. There was actually not a single one of them that was growing normally. The surroundings were filled with spirit energy. It seemed like if he did not change, he would not fit in. Calm down. Lone Moon patted his shoulder naturally. You'll be fine once you get used to it. He could get used to this? Alright, hurry up and cultivate. I'll teach you a simple sword technique today. Lone Moon changed the topic. As soon as he finished speaking, the other party's face paled. Is it really that simple? Of course. This is the basics. Zhua Shuming subconsciously touched his bruised face. You said the same thing a few days ago. He did not know why, but ever since the day he planted the spirit fields, Brother Lone Moon seemed to suddenly become more interested in his cultivation. Every day, he would either force him to cultivate or teach him all kinds of spells. He did not give him any chance to rest. He would teach him all kinds of spells. If the first time was not enough, he would teach him twice. If the second time was not enough, he would teach him thrice. If the third time was not enough, he would teach him. Straight face, yet he could not retort. After all, the other party was doing it out of kindness. His previous cultivation was indeed higher than his. He could only bite the bullet and learn. Although he did not have to plant the spirit fields anymore, he became even busier. He was not allowed to rest unless he learned 1 or 2 spells, or increased his cultivation. But even so, he felt that Brother Lone Moon was looking at him with more and more disdain. His entire face seemed to say, "You're the worst student I've ever taught." He had almost forgotten that his mission was to plant the spirit fields, not to cultivate. What's more, it was the kind where he risked his life to cultivate. Even when he occasionally remembered the mission, he reminded him. Brother Lone Moon, the spirit plant. What spirit plant? You can't even learn the water manipulation art. What face do you have to say anything else? Continue cultivating. Alright. Why did it feel like he had gained a master instead of a friend? The key was that his cultivation had really increased. In a short 2 months, he had risen from the 7th stage of chi refinement to the 10th stage. He seemed to be on the verge of breaking through. Lone Moon, who had been teaching for 3 months. He suddenly missed Fatty, who had skipped a grade. Chapter 640. 3 months later. A pink figure followed behind Steward He of the outer sect, heading towards the spirit field at the foot of the mountain. Junior sister Shu Yi. Actually, you don't have to come personally. Just let me know if there's anything. I'll get someone to send it to Danshan Mountain. Steward He led the way while smiling obsequiously. Senior brother, he is too polite. How can I trouble you? Shu Yi replied with a bashful smile, her face innocent and adorable. It's just because my father needs to refine a batch of spirit replenishing pills. Coincidentally, he lacks the fragrant spirit herb. This kind of low-level spirit herb can only be grown in the outer sect. My father needs it urgently. Coincidentally, I'm free, so I made a trip here. So the fragrant spirit herb that junior sister is looking for is what perfected Shu needs. Steward He was shocked. His attitude became even more respectful. Junior sister Shu Yi is indeed perfected Shu's bloodline. Not only is your cultivation rising quickly, you're also so filial. Senior brother He, you flatter me. Shu Yi smiled a little embarrassedly, looking like an innocent little girl. There are many of these fragrant spirit herbs in the outer sect. Coincidentally, today is the harvest period that happens once every 3 months. Steward He's gaze towards her became even more amiable. He hurriedly pointed to the front and said, Junior sister Shu, please follow me. Just tell me which spirit field you like. Thank you, senior brother. Shu Yi immediately skipped and followed. walking past large patches of spirit fields. Unknowingly or unknowingly, she approached the spirit field at the very edge. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded. "Host, don't you want to hurry and refine that heart-shaped immortal artifact? Then avenge the original owner? What are you doing here now?" "Of course it's to send warmth," Shui answered directly in her heart. Wasn't Zhuo punished to come here to farm spirit fields? And he even chose the worst spirit field. Now that the 3-month time limit is up, he definitely can't hand over 50 spirit herbs. I naturally have to help him. Help him why? Isn't Zhuo our enemy? He killed the original owner in the previous life. Why are you helping him? System, you don't understand. Shui sighed and said. For a scumbag like Zhuo, just snatching away his opportunity and preventing him from ascending, the original owner would not be satisfied. Only by making him lose everything, physically and mentally, and completely lose his will to cultivate, will he be able to achieve his goal of revenge. Sometimes living is worse than death. 001 doesn't understand. We've already taken away his most important immortal artifact, and he can't become a disciple of a soul formation cultivator. Isn't that enough? Of course not. Shui said angrily. In my previous life, the original Shui loved him so much, and for him, I did not hesitate to put myself in danger again and again. But he didn't know how to cherish it at all. Not only did he reject the marriage in front of everyone, but he also embarrassed her, because of a disciple who had just entered the sect. If not for this, the original owner would not have become a demon. In the end, he even died in his hands. It was Zhuo who ruined Shu Yi's life. How can the resentment of the original owner be resolved, just because she cannot ascend? What do you plan to do then? Didn't he say that he never had feelings for this junior sister of the original owner? Shui laughed coldly. Of course I'll let him have a taste of what it feels like to not be able to get what he yearns for. So the host came back this time to pretend to help him avoid the punishment of not being able to hand over the spirit herb. So that's what Shuming would like you? How is liking him enough? Shui said. I'll make him remember this. You're indeed the best host. Go for it. I have high hopes for you. Shui did not reply anymore, but the smugness in her eyes deepened, filled with the glow of determination. On a hill not far away, Lone Moon who heard the whole thing. I Ching who had just arrived. Speaking of which, did these two invaders really not notice this broadcast effect at all? They could hear it even from hundreds of meters away. It was really noisy. He turned to look at the side of the spirit field, at the scumbag, Zhuo who was already meditating. This was the first time he took a good look at his face. He didn't look that good. He wasn't even as good as that unlucky Song Run. What exactly did he do to attract such a rotten peach blossom? Even his ascension was dragged down. No wonder he bought it for $2. Father Niu. I Ching looked at Lone Moon inquiringly, then turned to look at Zhuo, who was meditating at the side of the field. Lone Moon frowned then replied, Let's go. That invader is probably coming over. I Ching then raised his hand and undid the spirit gathering array beside $2, then kept the 2 plates of pastries in front of Lone Moon. Holy shit. I brought those. What right do you have to keep them? Just as he was about to snatch them back, those 2 were already coming over. Senior brother what are they planting there? There seems to be the smell of fresh fragrant grass. Shui suddenly pointed to the spirit field at the side that was blocked by a large patch of weeds. That's a spirit field that's more remote. The spirit chi is also relatively thin. Steward, he replied casually. Suddenly thinking of something, he added, Oh right, a while ago, a disciple was sent over looking at the time. It's time to hand over the spirit herbs. Since that's the case, let's go over and take a look. There might really be fresh fragrant grass that looks even better. That's good too. Something flashed in Steward's eyes. He nodded. It's also convenient to look for that disciple who's planting and collect the spirit herbs that he handed over. He replied seriously, but in his heart, he was thinking, how could that piece of land grow spirit herbs? Back then when the higher-ups transferred that person to this spirit field, he already understood that this disciple must have offended someone from the higher-ups, as long as he waited for the season's harvest. If the other party could not hand over the spirit herbs, he could take the opportunity to chase him out of the sect. This kind of thing happened frequently in the outer sect. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Now that Shu Yi, an inner sect disciple, was here, plus she was the daughter of a nascent soul elder. Who knows, she might even be able to bring the news to the inner sect, and even gain some benefits. With that thought, he walked even faster, directly bypassing the large patch of tall weeds, heading towards the piece of land at the side. Shu Yi's expression darkened, and she immediately followed. The location of that piece of land was at the edge of the mountain. Due to the lack of spirit qi, the surrounding land was barren, covered with weeds that were as tall as a person, blocking one's vision. There was no way to see the situation of that piece of land at the side. Both of them had their own thoughts. Walking along a small path at the side, Shui looked at the surrounding weeds. Her thoughts became firmer, so she pretended not to know and asked, "Senior brother He, I see that this place has been barren for quite a long time. Why would they still arrange for disciples to plant here? Can spirit herbs be grown from this?" "Junior sister must be joking. This is a spirit field. As long as you put your heart into it, you will naturally be able to grow spirit herbs." Steward He replied, finally bypassing the weeds. "But this piece of land doesn't even have spirit qi. How is it possible to hand over spirit herbs? Wouldn't this be a little difficult?" She was just about to lay the groundwork and speak up for the other party, but she realized that the person in front of her suddenly stopped walking. His entire body stiffened on the spot. "Senior brother He? Senior brother He." Chapter 641. Shui was about to turn to look at the spirit field, when she saw a man dressed in green meditating in a pile of weeds not far away. It was Zhou Shuming whom she had seen in the hall previously. Her gaze darkened. The person meditating there seemed to have sensed the arrival as well, and woke up from his meditation, turning to look at the two people at the entrance. Seeming to recognize Steward He frowned and walked over with cupped fists. "Greetings, senior brother He, this senior sister." Shui immediately kept the murderous intent in her heart, and gave him a reassuring smile. "You're the junior brother in charge of this spirit field?" "That's right," Zhou Shuming replied and turned to look at Steward He. "Is senior brother He here to collect the 50 stalks of spirit herbs?" "I guess so." Steward He then turned to look at Zhou Shuming in shock. His breathing was a little hurried as he raised his voice and asked, This spirit field, you planted it?" Zhou Shuming nodded. "I planted it with junior brother Lone Moon." "How could this be?" Steward He raised his voice even more. Shu Yi's gaze darkened. A hint of a smile flashed across her eyes, as if certain that he would make things difficult for her. She immediately stepped forward with a sympathetic expression. "Senior brother He, you can't blame this junior brother for this. He clearly knew that this place is remote, and the spirit qi is thin, yet he still arranged for people to plant here. It's not fair in the first place. How can he expect good spirit herbs to grow?" Steward He faltered and subconsciously retorted, "No, junior sister Shu I dash. I know what you want to say." Shu Yi interrupted him with a pained expression. "Gui sect's rules have indeed always been strict, but this is pardonable. If you really want to pursue this, I don't mind telling this directly to my father, and let him judge." Steward He was stunned for a moment, not knowing what to say. Wait a minute, what is this all about? Shui thought that he was stunned. This sect was indeed a bunch of people who bullied the weak and feared the strong. A trace of coldness flashed across her heart, but her expression did not change. She still stepped forward worriedly and looked at Zhou Shuming. "This junior brother, I know you've tried your best, but senior brother He is not wrong. Gui sect has its own rules. How about this?" She pulled out a storage pouch. "I just happen to have 100 low-grade spirit herbs here. How about I help you turn in your harvest for this season?" She handed it over with a sincere expression. Zhou Shuming, Steward He, Lone Moon, I Ching. The entire place fell silent for some reason. Zhou Shuming suddenly understood what Brother Lone Moon meant when they were cultivating. Brother Lone Moon often called him a retard. He glanced at the bag in her hand, and subconsciously took a step back. Brother Lone Moon said that mental retardation was contagious. What happened? Seeing that he didn't take it, Shu Yi's smile became even more gentle and kind. How about I lend it to junior brother? Zhou Shuming then looked up at the woman in front of him, his gaze filled with complex emotions. He frowned and struggled for a moment before saying seriously, "Young lady, are you sick?" "What?" Shu Yi's hand froze instantly. Before he could react, the other party turned to look at Steward He at the side, and said with a serious expression, "Senior brother He, this junior sister should be sick. Your cultivation is high. Why don't you take a look at this senior sister?" He said seriously, his face full of worry. There was no teasing in it at all. He was really worried about the other party's health. "I think she most likely hurt her brain." "What did you say?" Shu Yi directly broke through. The gentleness and kindness on her face disappeared instantly, and a murderous aura surged out. Uffed. Lone Moon, who had been watching the show, finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Brother Lone Moon." Zhou Shuming's expression lit up, and he hurriedly waved at him. "Steward He is here to harvest the spirit herbs. Let's hurry and harvest this land." With that said, he turned and walked towards the land. "Don't move." Steward He suddenly exclaimed. His voice was so loud that it almost broke his voice. As if he had just woken up and realized what he should do, he grabbed Zhou Shuming tightly and said with a nervous expression, "Don't move. I'll go inform Sect Master now. Remember, before I come back, the spirit herbs in this land. No, don't touch even half of them, understand?" These were mutated spirit herbs. He had been managing the spirit fields for more than 100 years, and had never seen them before. What's more, there were mutated spirit herbs. Although they were low-level, their effects were already comparable to high-level spirit herbs. And they were priceless. He already didn't have time to think why such a piece of spirit field could grow mutated spirit herbs. He only knew that if he touched them, he wouldn't be able to bear even a single leaf. With that said, he hurriedly summoned his flying sword and flew towards the direction of the main peak. Before he left, he didn't forget to repeatedly instruct. "Don't touch them, don't ever touch them. Don't ever." Zhou Shuming. Lone Moon. Was there a need to? Even the weeds in their invincible Sect's back mountain were more high-level than these. On the other hand, Shu Yi at the side finally shifted her gaze to the spirit field in front of her. Then she was completely stunned. Looking at the densely packed spirit herbs in front of her, she couldn't react for a long time. She didn't know enough about spirit herbs and couldn't tell what these were. But looking at Steward He's attitude just now, she understood that not only did Zhou Shuming grow the spirit herbs, he grew them very well. How could this be? This was clearly a piece of barren land. Even the spirit chi here was pitifully low. How could he grow spirit herbs? If Zhou Shuming had already grown spirit herbs, then didn't she just? Her expression darkened even more. In an instant, boundless anger surged in her heart. Zhou Shuming was indeed a despicable person. He had clearly grown spirit herbs, and yet he still watched her make a fool of herself. He was deliberately watching her make a fool of herself. In an instant, the murderous intent in her eyes intensified. As if she could shoot out a knife, she stabbed it directly in Zhou Shuming's direction. Yet a certain silly sweet person completely didn't receive the other party's death stare. He looked up at the direction that Steward He flew off to without feeling anything. He sighed and said, "Seems like I have to wait for senior brother He to return before I can collect them." With that said, he was about to return to that pile of weeds to continue cultivating when he thought of something, and turned to look at Shu Yi beside him. This senior sister. Shu Yi didn't expect him to suddenly turn back. Before she could retract her venomous gaze, her expression stiffened. Her face instantly contorted. A moment later, she squeezed out a voice. "What? Junior brother? The spirit field is simple and crude. Why don't you rest on this pile of weeds first?" He looked at the weeds beside him. Shu Yi was shocked. She didn't expect him to actually invite her. She was just about to reject him when Zhou Shuming suddenly added in all seriousness, "After all, you don't look well." With that said, he even pointed and said, "You have to rest well. Shu Yi, you're the one who's sick in the head. Your whole family is sick. For all." Her expression instantly twitched. "I'm going to kill him. Kill him. Now, immediately, right now." "Hosts, calm down. He can't die now. The original owner's mission hasn't been completed. Chapter 642. You still dare to mention a mission? Shui was fuming and replied in her mind. What's going on with this spirit field? Didn't they say that this is the place with the weakest spirit chi? Why is he still able to grow spirit herbs? And they're not ordinary spirit herbs. I don't know about this either, but this is a high-level immortal cultivation world. The heavenly Tao is much stronger than other low-level worlds. And he was someone who had ascended in his previous life. Those who could ascend must be blessed by the heavenly Tao. Senior sister? Seeing that she wasn't replying, Zhuo Shuming asked again. Shui took a few deep breaths, then gritted her teeth, and replied to Zhuo Shuming. No need. Oh. Zhuo Shuming didn't mind. He wasn't familiar with her anyway. He turned and continued to cultivate. She then continued to ask 001. What exactly are the spirit herbs in this field? Why was that he guy so nervous just now? This field seems to be full of mutated spirit herbs, and some are advanced spirit herbs. All of them? That's right. It seems like this Zhuo Shuming must have some trump card. Shu Yi's expression darkened. Maybe he got some other opportunity. 001, can you skin anything on him now? No. If I scan him directly, the heavenly Tao will detect it. Her expression darkened even more. Forget it, we'll find out eventually. Lone Moon. I Ching. Speaking of which, the invader's habit of turning on the public speaker. No, the broadcast really couldn't be changed? They really didn't want to be spoiled. What exactly was she planning next? Lone Moon sighed, then turned to look at the spirit field in front of him. Others could only see rows of mutated or advanced spirit herbs, but in his eyes, the entire spirit field was covered with a thick layer of nomological power. There seemed to be countless tiny voices muttering beside each spirit herb. Grow faster, grow faster, grow faster. Grow prettier, grow better. Hurry, hurry, hurry. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He immediately turned to look at Chef, who was equally speechless, and sent a voice transmission. Chef. Chef nodded, then looked up at a certain spot in the sky and said, It's done. Then a soft voice sounded in their ears at the same time. Yes, boss, no problem, boss. Good comments. In the next moment, the nomological power surrounding the spiritual field dissipated. Originally, he didn't know how long it would take for Steward He to return after leaving. Unexpectedly, in less than a quarter of an hour, several figures flew over from the main peak. The person walking in front looked familiar. It was the sect leader of Guiyi sect. Behind him were a few nascent soul cultivators. They seemed to be the elders of the various peaks of Guiyi sect. They had also met in the main hall that day. The moment they landed on the ground, they stared at the spiritual field in front of them with their eyes wide open in disbelief. It's really a mutated spiritual plant. The sect leader's face was full of excitement. Not only that, another nascent soul elder said excitedly, Quick, look at that spirit plant. One leaf has 7 colors. This is an advanced spirit plant, and it's at least 2 levels higher. This is the first time I've seen so many mutated spiritual plants at once. The sect leader was so excited that his hands were trembling. He hurriedly pulled the steward who reported the news over. Ifu, who did you say planted this land? Replying sect leader. It's an outer sect disciple called Zhuo Shuming. Steward He did not dare to hide anything, and hurriedly replied with cupped fists. Everyone then recovered from their excitement, and glanced at Lone Moon, and Zhuo Shuming at the side. Greetings, sect leader elders. The two of them could only step forward and bow. The Guiyi sect leader sized them up and finally fixed his gaze on Zhuo Shuming, who was at the perfected qi refinement stage. You planted this spirit plant. Replying sect leader. I planted it with brother Lone Moon. Zhuo Shuming replied. A hint of admiration flashed across the Guiyi sect leader's eyes. He was in no hurry to take credit for himself. He was a good seedling. Do you know that our Guiyi sect has not had a mutated spirit plant for thousands of years? Although these are all low-level, their effects are comparable to high-level spirit plants. Are you willing to hand all these spirit plants over to the sect? He asked in a low voice. After thinking for a moment he added, Of course, we will pay you. Xuesheng turned back to look at Lone Moon. Seeing that he had no intention of objecting, he then replied, "These spirit plants were arranged by the sect to be planted. Naturally, they should be handed over to the sect." Besides, he had yet to start learning pill refinement. Spirit plants were actually of no use to him. Good. The sect leader's gaze became more satisfied. "I will calculate the amount, and then transfer the spirit stones to you according to the market price. Both of you have good temperaments. From now on, you can join my main peak and become official disciples." Xuesheng's expression instantly brightened. He was about to reply when Shui panicked. She exclaimed anxiously, "No!" The sect leader faltered. He then saw Shui at the side. "Oh, little E is here too. Why are you?" He was about to ask when an urgent cry came from above. "Where are the mutated and advanced spirit plants?" In the next moment, a person with soul formation spirit chi flew over hurriedly. A figure instantly appeared beside everyone. "Greetings, Uncle Master Tianyi." All the nascent souls bowed. The person who came was the soul formation cultivator, who almost took Xuesheng into Danxia Mountain. Tianyi ignored them. Instead, he turned to stare at the spirit plants all over the ground. He muttered in disbelief, "Mutated spirit plants are extremely rare. There are actually so many of them here at once. And there are advanced spirit plants too." His expression was agitated. Mutated spirit plants were precious, not only because their effects were comparable to high-level spirit plants. Instead, it was because they had a fusion attribute. They could better fuse with other medicinal properties. They could directly increase the success rate of pills by 10%. Advanced spirit plants could even directly increase the effects of pills. They could even directly refine supreme-grade pills. Who planted all these? As a soul formation supremacy, Tianyi could not hide the excitement in his heart. He hurriedly asked, "It's these two disciples." The sect master pointed at Lone Moon and Xuesheng. Tianyi turned and glanced at the two of them, his gaze fixed on Xuesheng, who had a higher cultivation. A trace of confusion flashed across his face. This disciple looked rather familiar, but he could not recall where he had seen him. He directly said, All right, from today onwards, the two of you can directly go to my Danxia Mountain." He could grow mutated spirit plants once. Who knows, he might be able to grow them a second time. Once he said that, the sect master did not say anything. Shu Yin at the side became even more anxious. No, if Xuesheng went to Danxia Mountain, wouldn't all her previous efforts be for nothing? Little E is here too. Tianyi glanced at Shu Yi. Why not? Because. Shu Yi's face paled. Her gaze shifted. She then replied, Because sect master had already asked them to go to the main peak. Anyway, she definitely could not let Xuesheng go to Danxia Mountain. Oh, really? Tianyi turned to look at the sect master. The sect master faltered. How would he dare to snatch people from Uncle Master? But at this point, he could only bite the bullet and nod. Chapter 643. Forget it then. Tianyi dispelled the thought of snatching her away unhappily. He looked at Shu Yi and then at Xuesheng, suddenly recalling, wasn't this disciple the one he almost accepted into Danxia Mountain that day? It seemed like he gave up on this idea, because Shu Yi said something back then. He frowned, suspicion rising in his heart. But Shu Yi was the daughter of a nascent soul elder after all. He did not say anything in front of her. Uncle Master, these spirit herbs, how should we harvest them? The sect master looked at him inquiringly. Of course, mutated spirit herbs are different from other spirit herbs. He conjured a seal with both hands and set up several array formations around the spirit field. I'll use the array formation to lock the spirit chi in the surroundings. Wait for me to get the spirit lock box. With that said, he hurriedly flew back in a flash. After a while, he carried a box and flew back. He then turned to the nervous crowd and said, You can start harvesting now. Don't get too close, in case you affect the spirit chi of the spirit herbs. He then carefully walked towards the red level 2 mutated spirit herb at the side. Xuesheng looked at the nervous expressions of so many mighty cultivators. He could not help but turn to look at Lone Moon. His expression enlightened. Brother Lone Moon, No wonder you don't let me near these spirit herbs usually. You're so particular about it. Lone Moon. Air. He was just worried that the heavenly Tao would think that he was the one who planted them. The 7 to 8 high-level cultivators around the spirit field carefully dug for a long time before finally digging out the roots of the first spirit herb. Lone Moon was tired watching. It was just plucking spirit herbs. Was there a need to be so careful? Alright, it's done. Tian then grabbed the spirit herb and pulled it up with a little strength before taking it out. He hurriedly put it into the spirit lock box. He was about to continue digging for the next one. Suddenly, a strong burst of spirit energy erupted from the ground. The pitifully thin spirit chi in the surroundings instantly thickened by tens of times, almost condensing into a physical substance. White fog appeared in the surroundings, as if it was about to condense into immortal chi. With a whoosh, a white light shot out from the ground and disappeared in an instant. That's a spirit vein. The Gue sect master immediately reacted and exclaimed, "It's a living spirit vein." Chase. Tian Yi's figure flashed and directly chased in the direction where the flash disappeared. A few nascent soul cultivators were a step slower, but they immediately chased after them. At that moment, only the Gue sect leader was left in the spiritual field. He also wanted to chase after them, but there had to be someone to look after these spiritual herbs. A complete living spirit vein would never surface, so it was extremely difficult to see it, let alone capture it. The so-called spirit veins of the various sects were actually just broken veins, just a portion of a spirit vein. However, that was a real living spirit vein. No wonder so many variant spirit plants had suddenly appeared here. It turned out that there was an entire spirit vein hidden here. Lone Moon glanced sideways at Chef. What was he doing? I Ching's expression darkened. He looked up at the sky and asked, "What's going on? Didn't you say you could keep it?" Another voice filled with endless grievance sounded in his ears. Sob, 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 sob. Wasn't it because the spirit vein had curled up in this small spirit field for too long and had fallen asleep? Leader, don't be angry. I was wrong. Lone Moon. TSK. The heavenly Tao of this plane was as unreliable as its master. He was indeed taught by Shening, a prodigal disciple. In the house far away, Shening was sprawled on the bed like a big pancake. Achoo. She raised her hand to touch her head. What was going on? Did she catch a cold? It must be because she ate too little. Her immune system had weakened. Speaking of which, when was Chef coming back to cook? The Gue sect leader grew more anxious the longer he waited. Seeing that everyone had yet to return, he suddenly wanted to chase after them to take a look. He was just about to call a few disciples to guard the spirit field. The surrounding spirit chi suddenly became restless and started to gather towards the right. He subconsciously turned to look and saw that all the spirit chi had gathered around Zwashuming. "2 bucks, Zwa." Lone Moon shouted and pushed him. "Why are you in a daze?" "Huh." Zwashuming faltered, completely unable to react. "You're going to Foundation Establishment." The sect leader paused in his steps and scanned him from head to toe. He reminded, "Hurry up and focus on meditating. Focus on Foundation Establishment." Only then did he react. He hurriedly sat down and started to focus on absorbing spirit chi. The surrounding spirit chi gathered even thicker and kept rushing into his meridians. Perhaps because he was used to being beaten up by Lone Moon these 3 months, his expression did not show much pain, and his absorption of spirit chi was also very smooth. The Gue sect leader nodded his head in satisfaction. Although this disciple's spirit root was a bit lacking, his temperament was not bad. If he could succeed in reaching Foundation Establishment this time, he would not be a useless person. Thus, he helped him set up a formation. Shu Yi, on the other hand, had a face of disbelief. Her expression turned even worse. How could this be? She had clearly stopped him from entering Danxia Mountain. Without Supremacy Tian Yi's guidance, why did he still reach Foundation Establishment, and 2 years faster than before? Foundation Establishment in a short 3 months. How was that possible? Could it be that she had helped him by not letting him enter Danxia Mountain? The more Shui thought about it, the angrier she got. But in her heart, She was even more determined that he must have had other opportunities. That's right. He must have other Dharma treasures. Otherwise he would not be so fast. Definitely. For a moment, the few people who were left had different expressions. They all looked at Zhuo Shuming nervously. However, the Guei sect leader was worried that his aptitude was not high. He was afraid that he would fail in foundation establishment. But Shu Yi was worried that he would not fail. Lone Moon, on the other hand, had a relaxed expression. Not to mention that he had successfully ascended in his previous life. Just in the 3 months he taught him, the strength he used to beat him up was much stronger than the amount of spirit qi injected into him during foundation establishment. It was only a matter of time before he reached foundation establishment. Tian Yi and the few nascent soul elders did not manage to catch up to the spirit vein that escaped in the end. Once that spirit vein left Guei sect, it disappeared without a trace. It was as abrupt as when it appeared. Spirit veins could only be chanced upon. Although the few of them were slightly disappointed, they did not care too much. They were already very happy to be able to obtain an entire spirit field full of mutated spirit herbs. And Zhuo Shuming had also successfully reached foundation establishment. Perhaps it was because of his good foundation. After he reached foundation establishment, he only needed to meditate for a night, and he had already stabilized his cultivation. He clenched his hands and excitedly conjured a few spells. Indeed, after his cultivation increased, the effect was completely different. He walked out of the room in surprise. Just as he was about to go next door to look for Brother Lone Moon, he saw the other party pushing the door open and walking out. He immediately went up to him. "Brother Lone Moon, you?" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened and he blurted out, You've also reached foundation establishment." Lone Moon nodded. He did not seem to mind at all. "That's right." Chapter 644. You're going out? Oh, that's right. Zhuo Shuming looked confused. When did Brother Lone Moon reach foundation establishment? He was still in the 6th stage of qi refinement yesterday. Oh, just last night. Just last night? So fast. That's right. Is there a problem? Zhuo Shuming, who thought he was already fast enough, became listless. No. He suddenly felt that he had some misunderstanding about cultivation. For example, in terms of speed. "Where are you going?" Lone Moon asked directly. Zhuo Shuming perked up and replied, "I was about to ask Brother Lone Moon to report to the main peak." "There's no hurry," Lone Moon said in a low voice. "Follow me to the External Affairs Hall first." "External Affairs Hall?" He faltered. "Yesterday, Senior Brother, he told me that we just have to report to the main peak. There's no need to go to the External Affairs Hall to inform them." "Who said I'm going to inform them?" Lone Moon glared at him. Of course we're going to get money," Lone Moon replied matter-of-factly. "Didn't Sect Master say yesterday that those spirit herbs will be paid for according to the market price? If we don't get it now, what if it's less after this is over?" It was safer to keep the spirit stones in his own pocket. After all, he had children to feed. "Why are you in a daze? Hurry up and go. Those spirit stones could only be collected by 2 people. "Oh right, remember that you still owe me a spirit stone? Since you're considered a friend, I'll add in the interest. When we split the spirit stones later, I'll give you 10% interest, you 40% and I 60%. How could it be calculated like that? Lone Moon and Zhuo Shuming received a total of 101,222 superior grade spirit stones. This was a large sum of money even for a nascent soul cultivator, much less a foundation establishment disciple. Zhuo Shuming felt his hands trembling, but Lone Moon looked at the bag of spirit stones in disdain, a row of words clearly written on his face. "That's all? Wasting my time." Then, she took out an abacus out of nowhere and pulled him along to calculate the accounts. He didn't know why, but the more he listened, the more confused he became. In the end, he only had 1,222 spirit stones. "Brother Zhuo, I see that you have a bad memory. It's not safe to leave these 1222 spirit stones with you. How about this? I'll take the loss and help you keep it. I'll only charge you 1 spirit stone a day, okay?" With the sound of the abacus still ringing in his mind, He subconsciously handed it over. Ah, okay, thank you. You're welcome. We're friends. Keep these 2 spirit stones for your pocket money. Thus, he only had 2 spirit stones left in his hand. All right. You've paid the interest of the spirit stones. But where's the principal of the spirit stone? Oh, here. Thus, he was left with only 1 spirit stone, Shining. I Ching. Oh yes, where did you ask me to go just now? Asked Lone Moon. Zhuo Shuming finally reacted. Report to the main peak's disciple hall. Oh, then let's go. Okay. He then got up and walked quickly out of the courtyard. His steps were light, and his face was full of excitement, as if he had encountered a great thing. Lone Moon's brows furrowed. He tilted his head and asked the master and disciple who were invisible beside him. Did I go overboard this time? Master and disciple. I'll give you a look of disdain. Feel it yourself. Was it that overboard? Lone Moon raised his brows, and then took out the bag of spirit stones. Then compensate him for your food expenses next month. The master and disciple were shocked. For claws instantly pressed down on his hand. Not overboard, not at all. The accounts are clear and flawless. Father Nyo is honest and honest, he has a very good conscience. Father Nyo is an honest businessman, money is rolling in. Brother Lone Moon. Seeing that he did not come out after a long time, Zhuo Shuming could not help but call out. Lone Moon glanced at the master and disciple, then kept the bag of spirit stones. Coming. At least you 2 know your place. Lone Moon and Zhuo Shuming successfully entered the main peak, and became official disciples of Guiyi sect. Compared to outer sect disciples, the treatment of official disciples was obviously much better. Although it could not be compared to the personal disciples of those elders, the conditions were considered good. At least each of them had their own courtyard. The surrounding spirit qi was also obviously much thicker. The main peak was also called Danlin Peak. The peak master was the sect master of Guiyi sect Yuan. Guiyi sect was divided into 6 peaks. They were Danlin, Danxia, Danshen, Danzhen, Dansheng and Dangu. From the name, one could tell that this was a sect full of pill cultivators. In the past they did not feel it in the outer sect, but the main peak was filled with all kinds of pill fragrances. And on each peak, there were golden core cultivators giving lectures every day. Every month, there were nascent soul cultivators giving lectures. As long as one was a disciple of the 6 peaks, one could go and listen. But most of the content was about pill refinement, or some mental cultivation techniques for pill cultivators. It was not that there were no other cultivators in the sect, but their cultivation levels were not very high. Among the tens of nascent soul cultivators in the sect, only 3 were not pill cultivators. And on the main peak there was a library. There were all kinds of cultivation techniques, and all kinds of spells. Disciples of the 6 peaks could go and borrow them. Zhuo Shuming was very excited. Disciples like him who had not formally acknowledged a master naturally did not have anyone to guide them. So on the first day he arrived at the main peak, he went to the library. He wanted to choose a few suitable cultivation techniques and spells for himself. He searched seriously for an entire day, but walked back listlessly. He did not bring back a single book. Brother Lone Moon. What is it? Lone Moon glanced at him and frowned in disdain. Why do you look like you're broke? Didn't you go to the library? I did go, but I did not find suitable cultivation techniques. For some reason, the more he looked, the more he felt that those spells were not as profound as the ones Brother Lone Moon taught him. Even with just one look, he knew that they were not as powerful as the ones Brother Lone Moon taught him in the past. Those cultivation techniques seemed to be more shallow? Lone Moon sipped his tea slowly and glanced at him. That's normal. In order to pass down their legacy, the higher-level cultivation techniques would naturally be kept in the hands of the higher-level cultivators. They would not easily pass them down. You're not their disciple. Moreover, Guiyi sect is filled with pill cultivators. High-level cultivation techniques are even more precious. But I don't want to become a pill cultivator. Zhuo Shuming frowned. You don't want to become a pill cultivator? Lone Moon glanced at him. If you don't want to become a pill cultivator, why did you come to Guiyi sect? Then what do you want to cultivate? Zhuo Shuming thought about it carefully, and touched his empty storage bag. Then he said hesitantly, "Pills, talismans, arrays and weapons are all more." He suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. "That's right, I can cultivate the sword. I want to become a sword cultivator." Uft! Lone Moon spat out the tea in his mouth. He slammed the table and stood up. "I dare you to say that again." Was he hallucinating? For all, for all, for all, for all, for all. Chapter 645. Zwishuming jumped back in shock, but still answered honestly, I want to be a sword cultivator." "Really?" Lone Moon was even more excited. He directly grabbed his collar and said word by word, "Are you sure you want to be a sword cultivator, not a body cultivator?" "A sword cultivator? What the hell was a body cultivator? Is there a problem?" Lone Moon suddenly froze. An indescribable strange expression appeared on his face, as if something was about to burst out of his eyes. After a while, he let go of his collar and said seriously, No problem at all. Sword cultivators are the best. You're very suitable for it, very suitable." After so many years, finally had a disciple who wanted to cultivate the sword. He wanted to cry. Really? Zwishuming's expression brightened. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed. "But there are no sword cultivators in our sect. There are very few books on sword techniques in the library, but I do." Lone Moon directly interrupted him, his entire being excited. "Sword techniques, right? What do you want?" "Heaven, earth, mystic, yellow, all levels. Oh right, you have a triple spirit root of water, wood and fire. Learn the mist sword technique first. You're the most suitable for foundation establishment. And you're old. You have to catch up with body cultivation. Only then can you unleash the full potential of your sword techniques. Of course you can't practice too much. If you practice too much, you'll become a body cultivator, like those invincible sect metal Barbies. And you can try to find a natal dermic artifact now. This will help you understand sword chi." He poured out a lot of things. Zwishuming listened with a confused expression. He just wanted to cultivate the sword. Why did Brother Lone Moon look even more excited than him? "Oh right, I remember back then. I think I took from Sun Shu. Exchanged a piece of red flame mystic iron. You happen to have a fire spirit root. Forge it and make it your natal dermic artifact." With that said, he directly took out a palm-sized crystal that was completely red like glass from his storage bag. He also took out a jade slip of the mist sword technique and handed it over. "This?" Zwishuming's eyes widened. He looked at the thing in his hand. Although he had never seen it before, just from the dense spirit chi on it, he knew it was not ordinary. He quickly shook his head and said, "No. Brother Lone Moon has already helped me so much. How can I just take your things? What's more, this thing looks very precious. I'm sure Brother Lone Moon spent a lot of effort to get it." "It's fine, we're all swords, we're all friends after all. It didn't take much effort." He had just casually put it in. Zwishuming shook his head even more resolutely. "Just because we are friends, all the more I should not take advantage of Brother Lone Moon." Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe and smiled even more happily. "Look at what you're saying. You call me Brother Lone Moon, so there's no need to calculate things so clearly." He directly stuffed the cultivation manual into his hand, patted his shoulder and said, Come, take it. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me." "But," he was still hesitant. "No buts." Lone Moon interrupted her directly and said earnestly, "Don't worry, seeing that we're friends. Why would I make things difficult for you? I know you're in trouble, these cultivation manuals and Dharma artifacts. I'll help you record them first." With that said, his tone changed, and he directly took out a thick account book and flipped through it. One could faintly see the word fatty flashing in front of him. Zwishuming. "So this all needs to be calculated?" "That's right. You haven't learned how to forge weapons yet. I'm sure you can't forge this scarlet fire mystic iron into shape. I know a friend, he's quite good at forging weapons. Why don't I ask him to help you forge a spirit sword first? Then you can nourish it into your natal Dharma artifact." Ah. Zwishuming was dumbfounded, completely unable to react. "It's decided then." Lone Moon kept the crystal directly. I'll give you a 9% discount on the casting fee, materials fee, cultivation technique fee, intermediary fee, and so on. Let's round it up to 5 million supreme grade spirit stones. We're all friends after all. Don't worry, my forging brother is very reliable. Bankrupt friend Zhuo Shuming. Reliable forging friend Yi Qing. Zhuo Shuming looked at the cultivation technique jade slip in his hand, unable to react for a long time. Wait, what just happened? Why did he suddenly have a debt of 5 million spirit stones of the highest grade? Things were developing too fast. He couldn't react at all. Today's weather is not bad. Lone Moon, on the other hand, was grinning from ear to ear. It was rare that Lone Moon's eyes were not filled with disdain, but with admiration. There's no time like the present. Let's start practicing now. Zhuo Shuming was still in a daze and subconsciously replied, but I don't have a spirit sword now, and he hadn't seen the contents of this jade slip. It's okay, I have it. With a swoosh, Lone Moon took out a spirit sword and stuffed it into his hands. Take it, I'll rent it to you first. It's not expensive, 1 spirit stone a day. We're all friends. He had almost forgotten about the word friend. Junior brother Zhuo. Suddenly, a crisp voice came from the door. A pretty girl in pink walked in, and smiled gently at the two. Congratulations on entering the inner sect, junior brothers. How are you living in the main peak? Do you have any difficulties? Zhuo Shuming turned to look. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. He turned and bowed. Greetings, senior sister Shu Yi. The person who came was that intruder Shu Yi. He didn't know what was wrong with her. Ever since the spirit field incident that day, she would come over from time to walk 1 round in front of Zhuo Shuming. Her attitude became gentler and gentler each time, asking about his well-being. The way she looked at Zhuo Shuming was also shy and timid. She looked like she was deeply in love. Anyone could tell. Her acting skills were considered superb. It was a pity that Zhuo Shuming seemed to be a little blind. Junior brother Zhuo, you don't have to be so polite. Shu Yi smiled even more gently. Just call me Shu Yi. Etiquette must not be forgotten. He replied seriously. Shu Yi could only sigh and look around. Her gaze swept past Lone Moon, and she said meaningfully, I wonder if junior brother is living well here? There are many disciples on the main peak. I see that the steward of the disciple hall had spent a lot of effort to arrange for the two of you to be next to each other. So this place was arranged by senior sister. Zhuo Shuming's eyes lit up, and he said gratefully, Thank you for your help, senior sister. To be able to stay close to someone he was familiar with, it indeed saved him a lot of trouble. You're welcome, it was nothing. Shu Yi smiled even more gently. Oh right. I'm here to inform you that the Peak Lord of Danshan Peak will be personally teaching tomorrow. My father hasn't personally taught for decades. Don't miss it. Chapter 646. Zhuo Shuming faltered. It was rare for a Peak Lord to personally conduct a lesson, but they were just disciples who had just entered the inner sect. Their foundations were not solid yet. If they were to listen to the Peak Lord's lesson, not only would they not understand, they might even misunderstand. Therefore, this kind of lecture was usually attended by disciples above the Jindan stage. Moreover, Danshan Peak Master Perfected Shu Yuan was also a pill cultivator. His lessons were probably all about pill cultivators. He had already decided to cultivate the sword, so there was no need for him to listen to a pill cultivator's lesson. Shu Yi came to invite him, a disciple who had just reached foundation establishment, to attend a lecture at Danshan Peak. Was he really sick in the head? He looked at her, a little speechless, but when he thought about how she had informed him out of goodwill, and he wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for him, he cupped his fists and said, Thank you, senior sister, for telling me about this. After thinking for a while, he couldn't help but add, Oh right, senior sister you. He suddenly took a step forward and looked at her face with a conflicted expression. After a while he said seriously, Your illness. Is it better? Have you seen a doctor recently? Shu Yi's perfect smile froze. By the way, your father is a nascent soul-perfected cultivator. Why don't you look for him? Shu Yi's face began to contort. I think it's best to treat an illness as soon as possible. Although we are cultivators and our bodies are stronger than mortals, we must not hide our illness for fear of treatment. Shut up. Shu Yi's gentle expression finally collapsed in an instant. She was like an exploding ball of fur. Pointing at him, she scolded. You're the one who's sick. Your whole King family is sick. Senior sister. Zhuo Shuming was stunned. Why was she suddenly scolding him? Calm down, host. He's the mission target. You have to hold it in. The system's voice sounded just in time. Shu Yi was so angry that she was muddled. She retorted in her heart. How do you expect me to calm down? This Zhuo Shuming is an idiot. After all I've done, is he blind? Can't you see that I'm seducing him? I think he's the one who's sick. If it weren't for the fact that he might have other fortuitous encounters, I wouldn't even bother with him. After Zhuo Shuming successfully entered Foundation establishment, the original owner's resentment level increased by another 10 points. If his cultivation catches up to yours, his resentment will increase again. If it exceeds 100 points, the mission will fail. Humph. I don't think his cultivation has improved much these few days. It's hard to say whether or not there are any new opportunities. What should the host do now? Should I continue to increase his favorability? Brush my ass. I just want to kill him now. She took a few deep breaths, as if desperately trying to suppress the anger in her heart. It's not like there's only one way to take revenge. Let's get rid of the resentment plants first. With that magic tool, I can immediately form my gold core. I don't believe that his cultivation can surpass mine without his celestial artifact. Good luck, host. Senior sister Shu Yi? Zhuo Shuming couldn't help but wave his hand in front of her eyes when he saw that she was suddenly rooted to the ground and staring at him. Was her illness acting up? Get lost. Only then did Shu Yi end the conversation with the system. She slapped his hand away and said, You scumbag, just you wait. After he finished speaking, he coldly snorted, turned around and stormed out of the door. Zhuo Shuming. This senior sister Shu must be sick, right? It seemed to have gotten worse. But why? Brother Lone Moon. He couldn't help but turn and ask with some hesitation. Did I say something wrong just now? Why is senior sister scolding me? Lone Moon turned to look at him. I'm giving you a look to figure it out yourself. Speaking of which, don't tell me this is how you gained hatred in your previous life. Brother Lone Moon? He was even more confused. You really can't tell that she's been trying to please you these few days? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Zhuo Shuming's expression was one of disbelief. You mean she likes me? How is that possible? I don't like her? Oh, why is that? Lone Moon looked at him in surprise. Putting aside the fact that she was an intruder, just by looking at Shu Yi's disguise these few days, she was indeed impeccable, gentle, kind and innocent, and her identity was that of a fair, rich and beautiful girl in the cultivation world. To a youth like Zhuo Shuming, shouldn't she be the ideal type? Look at the few times she came. She attracted the attention of so many disciples. Those people were even openly and secretly ostracizing Zhuo Shuming. Only a naive person like him could not tell. It had to be said that Shu Yi's persona was very successful. There was no one in the entire Guiyi sect who didn't like her. But from Zhuo Shuming's words, not only did he not like her, he even seemed to despise her. Because, Zhuo Shuming frowned. I can't put my finger on it. Although she looks good and her cultivation is good, I keep feeling that she doesn't seem to be that sincere towards others. Like she's hiding something? I don't want to be close to her. And he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shuddered. The way she looks at me, for some reason, makes me feel a little cold. Lone Moon faltered and looked at him in surprise. This guy might be silly, but his sixth sense was quite accurate. Since you don't want to be close to her, then just hide from her in the future. Lone Moon said in a low voice. He nodded in agreement. I know. I don't have any feelings for her, so I won't give her unnecessary hope and ruin her happiness for nothing. He thought of something and his face turned red. Finding a Dao companion is better if both parties are willing. Lone Moon turned to pour a cup of tea and asked casually, Oh? Then what do you like? He faltered for a moment, and really started to consider it seriously. After a long while he replied, I think someone like Miss Shin is not bad. Uffed. Lone Moon instantly spat out a mouthful of tea, splashing it all over Zhou Shuming's face. He faltered, and before he could react, he saw Lone Moon stand up instantly and suddenly turn around. His hands and feet gripped the edge of the table tightly. His body swayed unsteadily, as if he was desperately trying to stop something. All of a sudden, he heard a tug sound, as if something was being pulled out of something. The surroundings instantly turned cold. Zhou Shuming wiped the tea off his face and looked at the person who was still gripping the table tightly. He could not help but call out in confusion, Brother Lone Moon? Stop it! Lone Moon turned back and glared at him. What nonsense are you spouting? Chef, calm down. Calm down. He was just giving an example casually. He had no intention of teasing Shining. He put down the sword on Zhou Shuming's neck and kept the sword array. Yet Zhou Shuming had no idea that he had already stepped into the gates of hell. He even courted death by adding, I'm not spouting nonsense. I really feel that Miss Shun. Achoo. He suddenly sneezed and wiped his arm. Why do I suddenly feel so cold? Brother Lone Moon. Chapter 647. Shut up. You'll get colder if you continue. Do you know how hard it is for him to stop her? Shining already has a Dao partner. Don't even think about it. She has a Dao partner so soon. Zhou Shuming was shocked. A trace of regret flashed across his face. But he had only met her a few times after all. So he was not too disappointed. He sighed and said, Someone who is worthy of Miss Shin must be extremely outstanding. Not just outstanding, he also knows how to use a sword. The kind that hangs on your neck. Chef obediently kept his sword. Shining was still napping in the house. Guiyi sect would be destroyed if he woke her up. I Ching's expression turned even colder. After a long while, she slowly put down the sword in her hand. The invisible sword array in the air was also kept. She glared at the little bitch opposite her again. She snorted, turned and walked into the house, cold air emanating from her body. Even the door was pushed open with a bang, giving Zhou Shuming a fright. Is there wind? Lone Moon. No, someone is going crazy. Chef, be gentler. We don't know if Shining is awake yet. I Ching stormed into the house angrily and walked towards the bed. Suddenly, he bent over and hugged a certain someone who was sitting at the head of the bed eating a fruit. He buried his head in the other person's hair. His entire body seemed to be exuding a sense of grievance. Shining, who was suddenly hugged. What's wrong? Lost a quarrel with Father Niao? How many months of living expenses must have been deducted for her to be this aggrieved? $_. Ever since Shu Yi was angered by Zhou Shuming and left, she never came again. She probably gave up on the path of torturing the heart and body, and changed to the path of torturing the body. Lone Moon released his divine perception to sense, and found that she had indeed been in seclusion all this time. In just a few days, her cultivation had already reached the perfected stage of foundation establishment, and there were faint signs that she was about to form a core. He calculated carefully, estimated that she would form her core in these few days. Zhou Shuming's cultivation, on the other hand, did not change since he reached foundation establishment. Although he had been practicing his swordsmanship diligently for the past few days, and he had been studying his swordsmanship very seriously, his cultivation level had not increased. Although this was not slow for a triple spirit root like him, it was still not enough when compared to the invaders. Could it be that little Biao's scale is really that special? Lone Moon frowned in confusion. No matter how weak little Biao is, he's still a celestial emperor. I Ching said in a low voice. The scales that fell from his true body are naturally extraordinary in the lower realm. What's more, those were heart-protecting scales. But no matter how extraordinary it is, it's just a scale. Lone Moon still could not figure it out. Besides, it's been missing for so many years. It's already good enough that it could be refined into an immortal artifact. When did it become beneficial to cultivation? I Ching shook his head. I'm not sure either. Why don't we get another piece from Spoon? Lone Moon suggested. Shening. I Ching. Are you the devil? It's decided then. Every time he heard the intruder's little radio station brag about how good the scale was, He felt annoyed. Wasn't it just Scoop's scales? You think they don't? So he took out his communication jade token. Remembering that they were in the lower realm, he added an array on the jade token and sent a sliver of immortal chi into it. The next moment, Little Biao's image appeared in front of them. Young Emperor Lone Moon. Little Biao's voice rose, and there was a hint of excitement in it. You found my heart-protecting scale. I did find it. Really? Thank you so much, especially Exalted Goddess. But I can't get it back for now. Lone Moon's tone changed. Little Biao's smile froze. What did he mean? The situation is a little complicated. I can't explain it to you in a few words. We need to know what's so special about your scale in the lower realm. So we decided. Lone Moon coughed and said seriously, to get you to pull out another piece for us to study. What did you say? Pull out another piece? Little Biao's eyes widened as he stood up. Yes, this was Shen Ying's idea. Lone Moon suddenly reached out and grabbed Shen Ying, facing Little Biao's image. Shen Ying, son of AB *th. Little Biao's body trembled reflexively, and then he shrank back. His entire face was twisted into a bitter expression, and he looked like he was about to cry. All right, Exalted Goddess. No problem, Exalted Goddess. Oh yes, Lone Moon added. It's best if it's the scale on your chest. Are you a demon? Little Biao's expression became even more bitter. He turned back into his original form, and with tears in his eyes, he reached out with his claws, gritted his teeth, and pulled out a heart-shaped scale from his chest. Will this do? Lone Moon glanced at the scale. Is this piece smaller than the one before? Why don't you? Young Emperor Lone Moon, you really can't pull it out anymore. Little Biao said word by word. If he continued, he would become a pink beast. All right. Lone Moon nodded reluctantly. He turned around and pushed Chef, saying, Open the door and send the scale over. Chef looked at him speechless. Then he raised his hand and opened a small realm gate on the table that led to Little Biao's hand. In the next moment, a blood-red scale appeared on the table. Young Emperor Lone Moon, Exalted Goddess, remember to bring my scale back. There are 2 of them. Don't miss any. Little Biao reminded worriedly. All right, we got it. Don't worry, Little Biao, it's all right. Lone Moon replied. Little Biao. You said the same thing the last time. Lone Moon, however, kept the jade token and cut off the video. Only then did he step forward and carefully examine the piece of scale on the table. This isn't any different. It was just cleaner than normal scales. It was clear that Little Biao took good care of himself. I Ching also stepped forward and reached out to press on the scale. After sensing it carefully, his eyes suddenly widened. What is it? Lone Moon asked. What did you sense? Chef frowned and replied, Immortal Chi. Of course. Little Biao is a celestial emperor after all. This scale came from his real body. It would be strange if it didn't have immortal chi. It's normal to have immortal chi. Chef glanced at him and continued. But don't you think there's a little too much immortal chi on it? What do you mean? Lone Moon frowned and picked up the scale on the table. He probed a bit of spirit chi into it and was shocked. It's a little too much, but this immortal chi can't last long. Shu Yi had already lost the heart-protecting scale for more than 3,000 years, not to mention the time difference between the immortal realm and the mortal realm. Unless the immortal chi here has always been inside. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something and turned to Chef. Holy shit, it can't be. Chapter 648. Lone Moon conjured a seal and sent some immortal chi into the scale. Indeed, in the next moment, a golden pattern appeared on the originally black scale. It was the pattern on the scale, but the shape looked very much like a natural array, a spirit gathering array. It really is. Lone Moon's eyes widened in disbelief. Could Scoop's original form be Hidden Spirit Beast? Chef answered. Damn. The so-called Hidden Spirit Beast was a legendary beast born in spirit veins. There were very few of them, and they only appeared near large spirit veins. That was why not many people had seen what they looked like. It was said that they did not need to specially cultivate. Their bodies would naturally absorb spirit chi, and they could ascend directly when they grew up. No one knew the exact reason. From the looks of it now, it was because every scale on their bodies was a small spirit gathering array. They did not need to do anything at all to gather spirit chi into their bodies. Even if the scale fell off, the spirit chi inside was inexhaustible. What's more, Scoop was already a celestial emperor. Its scale would naturally convert the spirit chi it absorbed into immortal chi. In other words, the longer this scale was in the mortal realm, the more spirit chi it absorbed. As long as one carried the scale with them, the immortal chi could naturally be used. What was the difference between carrying this and carrying a spirit vein? No, carrying an immortal vein. No wonder Shu Yi's cultivation level rose so quickly. And it was normal for Zhuo Shuming to ascend so quickly in his previous life. What do we do with this scale? I Ching pointed at the heart-shaped scale in his hand. Things were already clear. Should he give Scoop back? Lone Moon took a look and narrowed his eyes. He said seriously, "You've already pulled it out. How can we face Scoop if we don't use it?" As he spoke, he sent a large amount of immortal chi into it. He only stopped when he felt that it was about the same as the one in Shu Yi's hand. Just nice. Give it to $2, Zhuo. It was just a cheat. What's the big deal? He could make one for him anytime. It was definitely not because he thought his cultivation was too slow. Shuning, I Ching. Scoop will cry. Can you make one? Lone Moon gave scale number 2 to $2, Zhuo. In order to prevent intruders from finding out, he hid the scale in his meridians. Even Zhuo Shuming himself did not know. Then he began to seriously teach him sword techniques. Although his aptitude was not very good, he was diligent and eager to learn. Lone Moon felt that after experiencing Fatty, who was an insulator to sword cultivators, his patience towards all sword cultivators had increased a lot. Especially towards Zhuo Shuming, a rare, active sword cultivator enthusiast. Moreover, to him, all he needed to do was to waste a little more time and beat him up a few more times. Especially after he found out that the intruder had stolen the gold finger, he was even less anxious. Estimating the time, Shu Yi was about to form her gold core. Indeed, 5 days later, on the right side of Guiyi Sek's Danshan Peak, thunderclouds suddenly filled the sky, thunder rumbled, and a hint of heaven and earth pressure seeped out from the clouds. Someone is about to form his gold core. Zhuo Shuming was shocked. He retracted his sword and looked at the clouds in shock. This is the lightning tribulation. He looked in that direction with some excitement and curiosity. After thinking for a while, he turned to look at the person beside him who was eating melon seeds. Brother Lone Moon. Go on. Lone Moon waved his hand nonchalantly. It was good for cultivators to be able to witness other people's tribulations. After all, the lightning tribulation carried the heaven and earth pressure, which helped to comprehend the heavenly Tao. Especially the lightning tribulation of core formation. It was the weakest among all the lightning tribulations. Its destructive power was not as great as other lightning tribulations. Remember not to get too close, he reminded. What is Brother Lone Moon talking about? Zhuo Shuming pulled him up. It's rare to see someone form a gold core. We naturally have to go together. With that said, he flew up on his sword and pulled him towards Danshan Peak. Lone Moon. Shit. He was so used to teaching disciples that he forgot that he was also a foundation establishment cultivator. The two of them had just flown up. Before they reached Danshan Peak, they saw many disciples from various peaks rushing over. It was obvious that they were also here to watch the tribulation. When they reached Danshan Peak, there were even more people. Densely packed seats filled the entire square. Danshan Peak disciples had the geographical advantage and were already seated in the front row. In front of the crowd stood a few nascent soul cultivators, especially the one right at the front. He was smiling until his eyes were align. He looked familiar and looked similar to Shu Yi. He should be Danshan Peak Lord Shu Yuan, Shu Yi's father. He seemed to feel that the person going through the tribulation was his daughter. His face was filled with joy. The few nascent soul cultivators at the side also congratulated him. He responded to them one by one. Even though he was happy, there was still some worry in his eyes. Yet he did not forget to turn back to instruct the disciples who came to watch. The lightning tribulation is dangerous. Those disciples who want to comprehend the heavenly Tao, just meditate this time. Do not leave the array casually. So Shuming looked around. Only then did he realize that the center of the square had indeed been set up with a defensive array, protecting the people who came to watch the tribulation. He could not help but feel relieved. He turned and said, "Brother Lone Moon, let's fight here." Brother Lone Moon. Brother Lone Moon. He turned and realized that the person who was just beside him had disappeared. He panicked and was about to look for her. Suddenly, a voice sounded beside his ear. "I've already found a place to sit down. You don't have to care about me." He then relaxed. Probably because there were too many people just now, he did not mind and directly followed the surrounding disciples to sit cross-legged on the ground, waiting for the lightning tribulation to begin. Lone Moon only heaved a sigh of relief when he saw him sit down. There were too many people here. Shining and Chef also concealed themselves. Usually it would be fine if they followed beside him. Now that there were 2 empty seats behind him, it would be strange not to be exposed. So he decided to conceal himself as well. Together with Chef and Shining, they left the square. They turned and flew to a piece of empty land further ahead outside the array. The lightning tribulation in the sky was almost ready. Finally, a bolt of white lightning tore through the layers of dark clouds and fell down. It struck the person who was going through the tribulation below. The first lightning tribulation was the lightest. Shui obviously took it easily. Following that, the lightning tribulation became more and more concentrated and stronger. One after another, they came crashing down. Lone Moon casually glanced at her. After 60 bolts of lightning tribulation, Shu Yi's face was already beginning to pale. Some wounds also began to appear on her body. She looked to be in a difficult situation. And the further it went, the worse her condition became. Especially when the 80th bolt of lightning came down. She directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Even the golden core that she had just formed was showing signs of breaking. Will this invader not be unable to withstand it and be struck to death? Lone Moon could not help but ask. This was only the golden core lightning tribulation. This was too weak. Chapter 649. I don't think so. I Ching shook his head and looked at that person. He frowned. At least the other invader won't let her die. Huh. Lone Moon paused. The last bolt of lightning struck the person on the ground. Shui obviously had no strength to resist. Just as the tribulation lightning was about to hit her, a layer of strange green light suddenly flashed around her body, directly blocking the power of the tribulation lightning. Host, are you alright? The familiar broadcast sounded again. Lone Moon. I'm fine. Thank you 001. Shui replied. I didn't expect the so-called lightning tribulation in this world to be so powerful. The lightning tribulation is the most direct proof of the heavenly Tao. Of course it's powerful, but I can only temporarily slow down the time it takes for the lightning to hit you and deceive the heavenly Tao. But after that, the lightning will still fall on you. Shu Yi's expression darkened. After a while, she nodded and said, I understand. I will find an excuse to go into seclusion and prepare to take on the lightning tribulation. Host, you can do it. Congratulations on successfully forming your core. Hurry up and absorb spirit chi to heal your injuries. Shui climbed up and continued to sit properly. The 3 of them. So that's how it was. This 001 system exploited a loophole in time to infinitely extend the time it took for the lightning to strike. The heavenly Tao could not completely monitor time because to it backtracking, pausing or speeding up time was not normal. It would automatically adjust it. But the invader did not belong to this world. So they were not under its supervision. As long as they did not cause too much of an impact, it naturally would not find out. Lone Moon's expression darkened. It seemed like this system was very good at exploiting loopholes in the heavenly Tao. It seemed like it was not the first time it had done this in other planes. Shu Yi had just sat down when the surrounding spirit chi suddenly began to gather towards her, healing her injuries. The thunder clouds in the sky also dispersed. The surroundings became bright again. Faintly, There were some colorful clouds floating in the sky. They became brighter and brighter, as if they were condensing into some kind of image. Look up. One of the disciples suddenly exclaimed. Could it be that a phenomenon is going to appear? For a time, everyone, including the few nascent soul cultivators, raised their heads in unison and looked up at the sky with excitement. On the other hand, the faces of Shen Ying and the other two people darkened, especially Yi Qing, who glared at the sky. What are you doing? The colorful clouds that were about to take shape in the sky suddenly froze. In the next moment, the nomological power above began to move around in a panic. Suddenly, there seemed to be a small voice that pitifully said, Don't you want it? Leader. Chef's voice deepened. Do your job properly. Why are you causing trouble? Sob, 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 sob. Yes, boss. No problem, boss. It saw that you had been staring at that person's tribulation for a long time. So it wanted to suck up to you and give you some avatars. Who knew that he had slapped the horse's leg? In the next moment, the rosy clouds in the sky turned black in an instant, and a burst of rain poured down, instantly drenching Shu Yi who was below. There was even a faint sour smell. Shu Yi, everyone, the trio, sigh. In this day and age, it was too difficult to be heavenly Tao. He couldn't guess the leader's thoughts at all. Little Yi. Shu Yuan, who had been watching this side anxiously, was the first to rush up. Seeing her drenched appearance, he was stunned for a moment, then immediately reacted and asked with concern, Little Yi, are you all right? He also couldn't guess what that was in the sky just now. It clearly looked like an avatar, but in the next moment, there was another burst of rain, and it was acid rain. But she was his daughter after all. So he didn't think too much about it, and directly conjured a dirt removal spell for her. Shu Yi, who was stunned by the sudden burst of rain, finally reacted. Thank you, Daddy. I'm fine. Shu Yuan nodded in satisfaction. Let's go and meet your uncle masters. They were also outside just now to protect you. Yes, Daddy. She smiled obediently and then followed Shu Yuan forward, but at the same time, she called out to the system in her heart. 001. What's with that rain just now? Why is there still rain after the lightning tribulation? I don't know either. Maybe when I attacked just now, the heavenly Tao sensed something. Then what should we do? Shu Yi's face paled. The heavenly Tao should only be suspicious. It looks like you have to quickly endure the last lightning tribulation. Shu Yi gritted her teeth, her heart filled with frustration. She kept feeling that ever since she came to this world, everything she did was not going smoothly. What about the resentment points? She thought of something and asked directly. Did the original owner's resentment points decrease? Let me check. The original owner's resentment points did not change. It will probably only decrease after she sees Zhuo Shuming. Shu Yi frowned. Then where is he? Is he here? Discovered target, 50 meters ahead. She turned to look, and indeed in the crowd, she saw Zhuo Shuming sitting on the ground. Now that the lightning tribulation had ended, most of the disciples had already left. Only he was still sitting in the middle, looking up at the sky thoughtfully. Shu Yi's heart leaped with joy. She hurriedly greeted the uncle masters who were congratulating her, as well as the other disciples she was familiar with. Then she exclaimed in surprise, Junior brother Zhuo is here too. With that said, she walked directly towards Zhuo Shuming, ready to harvest the resentment points. She stood in front of Zhuo Shuming and deliberately raised her head slightly, smiling. Junior brother Zhuo. No, I should call you disciple nephew Zhuo now. Zhuo Shuming faltered, then looked towards Shu Yi, his expression still somewhat confused. Disciple nephew? Senior sister Shu? Shu Yi's smile deepened, but there was a coldness in her eyes. Did you see that original owner? As long as you are strong enough, even those whom you could only look up to in the past could only look up to you. Ding! Original owner's resentment points decreased by 10. It really worked. Shu Yi heaved a sigh of relief, finally feeling a sense of relief. She then added, You should call me Uncle Master Shu. The sect's rule is that those above Golden Core should be addressed as Uncle Master. Uncle Master Shu? Zhuo Shuming frowned. Suddenly, as if recalling something, his eyes widened. I understand. It's good that you understand. Don't forget in the future. Before she could finish speaking, a huge burst of spirit chi suddenly erupted from Zhuo Shuming's body. Even the surrounding spirit chi began to gather towards him. Xu Yi lost her footing and was almost swept away by the violent spirit chi around her. Little Yi. Fortunately, Xu Yuan, who was beside her, helped her up. Xu Yi looked at Zhuo Shuming with a confused expression. He's having an epiphany. Xu Yuan took one look and immediately reacted, also shocked. Turning around, he pulled Xu Yi back and said to the people around him, "Everyone hurry and retreat. Don't affect this disciple's epiphany." Epiphany? Xu Yi's face paled, her eyes widened in disbelief. How could this be? How did he suddenly have an epiphany? Before she had time to be shocked, she suddenly heard a series of familiar mechanical sounds. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +5. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +10. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +20. The group of 3 not far away. System. Xu Yi. What the hell? For all, Ngun Guo. Speaking of which. The corner of Loman's mouth twitched. He looked at Zhuo Shuming, who was already surrounded by spirit chi. Why do I feel that Zhuo Shuming alone is enough to deal with this invader? Zhuo Shuming's actions were simply poisonous, the kind that specifically poisoned Xu Yi. He suddenly had the urge to light a candle for the intruder. What was going on? Chapter 650. Zhuo Shuming's epiphany did not last long. He woke up in the afternoon. His cultivation also jumped from the early stage of foundation establishment to the late stage. Perhaps because there were too few disciples who could achieve epiphany. Although his cultivation was low, he still attracted the attention of the various peak masters of Gui sect. They looked at him with more and more satisfaction. Zhuo Shuming was excited too. He immediately turned to look for Lone Moon, wanting to share this joy. In the end, he did not find him. Apart from the nascent soul elders who helped to protect him on a whim, the square was empty. Even the disciples who were watching the tribulation had all left, including Lone Moon. Epiphany was not like tribulation. Others would not benefit from it. Naturally, they would not stay to watch. Zhuo Shuming. What happened to being friends? However, he did not pay too much attention to it. He solemnly thanked the elder who had helped to protect him, and then went straight to Lone Moon's courtyard with a look of joy on his face. From afar, he saw Lone Moon sitting in front of the table, holding a bowl of rice in his hand, and eating like a whirlwind. Brother Lone Moon? Zhuo Shuming was stunned. He looked at the table suspiciously. You haven't achieved grain liberation? Why, you have a problem. Lone Moon looked up, then turned and continued to snatch food. Shit. The divine meat was all gone. Don't think that others can't see you. You're snatching so fiercely. He just can't see you, he's not blind. No problem. Zhuo Shuming was stunned. He was just surprised that Brother Lone Moon was already a foundation establishment cultivator, yet he had not achieved grain liberation. Wait, didn't the food on the table disappear too quickly? Let's go, we'll talk outside. Lone Moon quickly finished the meat in the bowl, dragged Zhuo Shuming out, closing the door behind him. When they walked into the courtyard, he scanned Zhuo Shuming up and down, frowned, saying with disdain, You're now a foundation establishment cultivator? What happened to the epiphany? Did it go to waste? I'm already in the late stage of foundation establishment. Zhuo Shuming thought he was happy for him. He immediately said excitedly, I didn't expect it to be so fast. He fast. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Look at Chef. His epiphany is a leap of 1 or 2 major realms. Why did you jump a small realm? So your epiphany is also worth 2 yuan. Isn't it fast? Zhuo Shuming faltered. Sect Master already said it would be soon. Why was Brother Lone Moon looking at him with even more disdain? Forget it. Lone Moon sighed and said, Since you're already in the late stage of foundation establishment, you can start practicing the second stage of that sword technique from before. Of course. He nodded. A moment later, he seemed to think of something. His brows furrowed, and he hesitated. It's just that this epiphany For a moment he didn't know what to say. What's the matter? Lone Moon asked. What happened to you again? Shuming looked around warily and suddenly gritted his teeth. Let's talk inside. With that said, he pulled Lone Moon back into the house and closed the door warily. Then with a conflicted expression he said, Brother Lone Moon, this time why are the dishes on the table gone? Not just the dishes, even the plates had disappeared. He remembered that Brother Lone Moon didn't clean them up just now. Lone Moon, who was pulled inside, stiffened. He turned to glare at a certain foodie who had eaten and drank to her heart's content, and was waiting for Chef to serve pastries. He immediately sent a voice transmission. Hurry up and go in to eat, you're going to lose your disguise. So troublesome. Shining laid on the table without moving. Troublesome my ass. Lone Moon's face turned green. Chef, hurry up and take her away. I Ching faltered. He glanced at the pastries in his hands that he hadn't put down in time, and kept them. Master, I'll bring you in to eat. With that said, he bent down and carried the pile of mud on the side of the table, and turned to enter the house. I set up an array on the table. Lone Moon then replied, $2 swa. It will clean up automatically. Brother Lone Moon knows array formations. Zwa Shuming was shocked, his eyes filled with surprise. Nonsense. Is there anything I don't know? Lone Moon then sat down at the table. What were you trying to tell me just now? His expression changed instantly, and he frowned again. He then turned to sit on the chair beside him and asked, Actually, I don't know what's going on either. I keep feeling that my epiphany just now was strange. Huh. Lone Moon faltered. What's strange? I can't say either. He looked even more confused. Previously when I saw Senior Sister Shu. No, now when Uncle Master Shu was going through the tribulation. I don't know why, but I kept feeling like I had seen her before, but I couldn't remember what it was. Lone Moon was shocked and turned to look at him. Later, Uncle Master Shu suddenly came over and told me that she had already ascended to the Golden Core stage. My mind suddenly thought of the method of channeling spirit chi for core formation. His frown deepened. Then, I realized that I had an epiphany. Although I've seen the method of core formation in all kinds of cultivation manuals before. But what floated in my mind before was different. It was like, he didn't seem to know how to explain. His frown deepened. After a while he said hesitantly, It was like, I had formed my core before. Formed your core before? Lone Moon tightened the fan in his hand. Tell me in detail, why did you have such an idea? Did you see something? I didn't. He shook his head and said, It was just a feeling. I could even think of how to block every bolt of lightning. Have you told this to anyone else? Of course not, he said in a low voice. How could I mention such a strange thing to anyone else? I can only tell you. Brother Lone Moon, tell me, is there something wrong with me? He looked confused. I'm still a foundation establishment cultivator. How could I know so much about core formation? It's like I've experienced it before. No, you've really experienced it before. Do you think He suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened and he stood up. What? Lone Moon was shocked. It can't be. You really guessed it? Zwa Shuming suddenly sat closer. He lowered his voice and said nervously, Don't tell me. I've been infected by Senior Sister Shu. Is there something wrong with my brain too? Lone Moon. Shining. I Ching. Infected my ass. For all. Ngunguo, don't you freaking make Shui feel uncomfortable all over? I've never met a partner who's so cooperative. Indeed, they're unnecessary, right? $2 Swa alone can definitely turn the whole place upside down. Brother Lone Moon, didn't you tell me the last time that mental retardation is contagious? Zwa Shuming analyzed seriously. I think that Senior Sister Shui, no, Uncle Master Shui must have the so-called mental retardation that you're talking about. Hasn't she been coming to our courtyard recently? It was only after she spoke to me that I had an epiphany, so I must have been infected by her. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. He even asked, Brother Lone Moon, what do you think? Chapter 651. I say $2 Swa. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He took a deep breath and patted his shoulder. Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better not see Shui in the future? You think so too? His expression brightened. No. Lone Moon cut him off. I think she'll beat you to death the moment you open your mouth. What did he mean? Then am I sick or not? Don't worry. Lone Moon sighed and said, with your intelligence, do you think there's any room for you to be infected with an advanced disease like mental retardation? None of you are mentally retarded. He was the one who thought that $2 could sense that he was being rewound earlier. Although he didn't understand what he meant, he suddenly felt like he was stabbed by a knife. Alright, just focus on your cultivation. Why are you thinking so much? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Am I really fine? He looked at her blankly. You're fine. You're so healthy that you look like you're black. You don't look like you're in trouble. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He thought for a moment and casually said, you only had an epiphany after looking at other people's tribulations. Maybe you only saw a sliver of heaven's secret. That's why you feel like you've formed a core before. This is your opportunity. This is heaven's secret. Xuesheng was shocked. The worry on his face disappeared instantly. He seemed to have thought of something. Then why don't I? Alright, you can scram now. Go practice your sword tomorrow morning. Lone Moon didn't want to listen to him anymore. He directly pulled him open the door and kicked him out. Don't come to my place at night again. It was fine if he was eating. What if he was angry when he woke up? But he still wanted to say something. Scram. Lone Moon slammed the door shut. Xuesheng. He had wanted to tell Lone Moon about heaven's secret in detail. He wanted to see if he could help him have an epiphany too. Could it be that he had a bad temper because he didn't have enough to eat? Xuesheng touched his nose and went back into the house. Lone Moon only raised his hand to set up a few isolation arrays when he sensed that the other party had left. He turned and walked into the house. He looked at the two people who had heard the whole thing and snatched a piece of cake from them. What do you think about $2's epiphany? He must have sensed something from his past life, Iching guessed. But time has already turned back. How can he still remember? Lone Moon did not understand. When Chef rewound, there was no such phenomenon. It was only after he fully awakened his assistant's abilities that he regained his memories. Could it be that the system rewinding time is different from the manager's active adjustment? Could it be that there are repercussions? That should be impossible. Iching shook his head. It could actually pull Xuesheng down to the lower realm. This proves that time has really reversed completely. There would not be a loophole like him remembering his past life. Then why do you have an impression of your past life? Both of them frowned. Maybe that's not his impression? Shening suddenly said. Didn't he just say that it's about the feeling of a golden core? Lone Moon blurted out. Things like core formation, if it's not his own. Holy shit. He suddenly thought of something and subconsciously turned to look at Chef beside him. It can't be that stupid heavenly Tao of yours, right? I Ching. What the hell is stupid? But thinking about it, it made sense. The heavenly Tao does not have sentience, but it will still correct itself when it encounters problems. The three of us have all come down to the lower realm. It's normal that the heavenly Tao can sense that something is wrong. I Ching nodded. Alright. So the excuse that he casually used to trick $2 was true. In a sense, this was really a heavenly secret. This heavenly Tao is finally sensible for once. No matter what. Such an epiphany was still beneficial to $2, whose cultivation was as slow as a tortoise. Xuesheng's cultivation jumped to the late stage of foundation establishment. He was even more enthusiastic about practicing the mist sword technique. Under Lone Moon's guidance, he successfully comprehended the second level of the sword technique. His set of sword technique was divided into 10 levels. Although Xuesheng did not know which extremity this set of sword technique belonged to among heaven, earth, mystic, and yellow, he vaguely sensed that he would only be able to completely master the entire set of sword technique after he reached the nascent soul stage. But he did not know why. His cultivation was clearly much higher. But every time he practiced, he would still be beaten black and blue by Lone Moon, whose cultivation was much lower than his. And compared to when he had not comprehended the second level, he seemed to be beaten even harder. He even glorified it by saying, true skills can only come from practice. Sword cultivators are trained by fighting. He suddenly had some doubts. Was Lone Moon really just a foundation establishment cultivator? He heard that sword cultivators could always challenge those of a higher level. But Lone Moon only challenged him. The key was that he did not even have the strength to fight back. He could not even last one move. It must be because he was too weak. He did not learn the sword technique well. Sword cultivators were indeed broad and profound. He could not help but be motivated. He practiced even more seriously. He was just short of practicing for a full 24 hours a day. Old Father Lone Moon expressed that apart from being a little slow, he was quite satisfied. Just as he was thinking of ways to make him run faster, a person suddenly came to the main peak. He was wearing a disciple uniform that was completely different from theirs. His sleeves were even embroidered with the unique patterns of each peak. Sect Master wants to see us? Xueshuming was stunned. He put away the sword in his hand and looked at Lone Moon blankly. I wonder what's the matter. I don't know about that. The person shook his head. He looked at them and smiled kindly. Maybe it's something good? Junior brothers, why don't you quickly follow me to the main hall? Xueshuming subconsciously looked at Lone Moon. Seeing him nod, he then replied, Thank you, senior brother. The person then turned and led the two of them towards the main hall of the main peak. The moment they entered, Lone Moon felt a cold gaze sweep over them. It landed on Xueshuming, who was in front. Lone Moon looked over. It was indeed that invader Shu Yi. She seemed to have recalled something. She looked at Xueshuming with a gaze so sharp that knives almost flew out. But she looked different from when she formed her core. Her spirit chi was more condensed. But there was something else about her body. It was just that it was so shallow that it could not be found. It's demonic chi. I Ching suddenly transmitted. A few days ago, she should have come into contact with a fiendish cultivator. Or someone who became a demon. That's why she was infected with the aura of demonic chi. Lone Moon's expression darkened. His brows instantly furrowed. Fiendish cultivator? This invader's business was quite extensive. He hadn't seen her for half a month. He thought she had gone to find a place to receive the last lightning tribulation. He didn't expect that she still had time to come into contact with a fiendish cultivator. He didn't know what she was up to. It seemed like he had to keep a closer eye on Xueshuming. Chapter 652. The hall was filled with people. The various peak masters and elders were all present. They even brought their disciples with them. Guei Sect's sect master Yuan sat on the main seat, smiling at the two people who entered. Other than Shu Yi, who looked unfriendly, the other nascent soul elders had the same expression. They even had a hint of admiration. Of course, these were all directed at Xueshuming. The two of them bowed politely. Yuan then explained to everyone, I called all junior brothers here today mainly to inform all of you. I think these two disciples are not bad. I want to officially take them in as disciples. What do you think? The moment he said that, all the elders had expected expressions, as if they had already guessed Yuan's intentions. On the other hand, Shu Yi's face darkened. I said so too. An elder smiled and said, Our Guei sect has never seen a disciple with an epiphany in so long. We also want to take them in as disciples. I didn't expect senior brother to act so quickly. If junior brothers have no objections, then I will accept these two disciples. Yuan's smile deepened. He then looked at the two people in the middle and said, You should be called Lone Moon? From today onwards, you will be the 13th disciple under my sect. Lone Moon stiffened. He really didn't expect that the other party called them here to take in disciples. To be honest, he really didn't want to acknowledge a master. Not only was it inconvenient for him to move around, he didn't know as much as him. He wanted to find an excuse to reject. As for Xueshuming, Yuan turned to look at Xueshuming. The satisfaction in his eyes deepened. From today onwards, you will be my personal disciple. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that he would directly take him in as a personal disciple. They didn't expect senior brother sect master to think so highly of this person. How can this be? Shu Yi was shocked and directly blurted out. How could he be a personal disciple? One must know that there was a difference between an ordinary disciple and a personal disciple. There was usually only one personal disciple, and they would leave a personal imprint in the other party's divine perception that could not be casually removed. They would also teach everything to their personal disciples without holding anything back. Shui panicked. Yuan was the sect master of Guei sect. If Xueshengming became his personal disciple, wouldn't he get whatever he wanted? In that case, wouldn't his treatment be even better than when he was at Danxia Mountain in his previous life? One must know that although he received Supremacy Tianyi's guidance in his previous life, he was only taken in as Supremacy Tianyi's disciple after he formed his core. Furthermore, he was only one of his many disciples. Sect Master, how could you accept him as your direct disciple? She immediately stood up. Why? Yuan paused and asked subconsciously. Little E. Shu Yuan frowned and reprimanded Shui angrily. Don't be rude. He was about to pull her back. Shui came back to his senses. His eyes darted around before he said, how can the direct disciple of the sect master be so casual? I don't think there's anything special about this disciple. Furthermore, he's only a foundation establishment disciple with 3 spirit veins. She took a deep breath and said with a worried expression, besides, you're the sect master of my sect. Your personal disciple concerns the future of our sect. I see that many Golden Core senior brothers haven't even had the opportunity to become your disciple? Sect master must be careful. When everyone heard that, they felt that it made sense. He was indeed the sect master's direct disciple. If there were no accidents, he might be the next sect master. Indeed, they had to choose carefully. I feel that this disciple is very suitable. Yuan's smile deepened, but he had no intention of changing his mind. Everyone, you might not know, but I've been paying attention to this child for a long time. Although he has 3 spirit veins and looks ordinary, that's not the case. It hasn't even been a year since he entered my Guei sect, and he's already cultivated from Qi refinement level 7 to late-stage foundation establishment. I think even a celestial spirit root wouldn't be as fast. A hint of surprise flashed across everyone's eyes. This speed was indeed a prodigy. He had an epiphany just by looking at a tribulation experience. This proves that his comprehension is not something ordinary people can achieve. Furthermore, when he was still in the outer sect, he managed to grow a mutated spirit plant on an abandoned spirit field. That mutated spirit herb was planted by him. Everyone was shocked. An elder even stood up directly. That's right. Yuan nodded. Although those spirit herbs appeared because of the living meridian. But if there wasn't this opportunity, how could it be him? Every immortal cultivator is doing things that go against the heavens. And this child, he doesn't lack any talent, comprehension or opportunity. After he voluntarily handed over all the mutated spirit herbs, he never made any requests. After his epiphany, he was neither arrogant nor rash. These days, he has been cultivating diligently. It shows that his temperament is exceptional. Everyone was even more surprised. Their gazes towards Xueshengming were filled with admiration. Such a disciple is indeed not bad. That's right. There are fewer and fewer people as outstanding as him now. No wonder sect master is in a hurry to take him in as a direct disciple. Everything else is secondary. Even Shu Yuan couldn't help but praise him. Just this temperament alone is something that others can't achieve. Senior brother sect master has good taste. Seeing that Xueshengming becoming a direct disciple was about to be confirmed, Shu Yi was even more anxious. But sect master, little E. Shu Yuan interrupted his daughter and glanced at her. Don't make a fuss. Sect master knows what he's doing. In terms of temperament, even you can't compare to him. What? Shu Yi's eyes widened in disbelief. But she heard a voice that made her even angrier. Ding! Original owner's resentment points plus 10. Warning! When resentment reaches 100, the mission will automatically fail. Damn it! Why did the resentment points increase again? Shu Yi was so angry that her liver was hurting. She even started to speak incoherently. Who said I can't compare to him? She was clearly already a core formation cultivator. Her cultivation had always been above his. Shu Yuan's brows furrowed. He was displeased with his daughter's strange temper. He was about to reprimand her when a cold male voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Who said my little E can't compare to others? In the next moment, everyone felt a strong gust of wind rushing into the hall. It also brought with it an irresistible suppressive force. A black figure appeared in the hall instantly. His entire body was filled with cold air. He scanned the people in the hall with dissatisfaction. Everyone was shocked. They instantly recognized the person. Everyone, including the sect master, stood up and bowed with cupped fists. Greetings, Uncle Master Tianji. The person who came was another soul formation supremacy of Gui sect. Lone Moon raised his brows. Yo, the person who had turned into a demon was here. But for some reason, the demonic chi on his body was all suppressed in his dantian. It was as if it was locked by something. Chef, what's going on? Lone Moon turned to look at I Ching. There's an energy in his dantian that doesn't belong to this plane. It's suppressing the demonic chi and preventing him from completely turning into a demon. I Ching said. So that was it. Seeing how he was standing up for Shu Yi, it seemed like it was that system's doing again. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.